Good evening, everybody. Tonight is the 2022 BET public hearing. We are going to discuss, or you are going to discuss, not us, you're going to talk about two topics tonight. One is the fiscal 22-23 town budget. And this year, we have an additional item, which is the American Rescue Plan Grant Fund, which is something new for this year, which will also be part of the budget process. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here. And I'm looking out at this room, and I see well over 100 people, standing room only. So I sincerely thank all of you for attending tonight. Before the meeting started, I saw great discussion. Everybody in the room meeting old friends, meeting new people, and this is really Greenwich government, town government in action. So thank you for that. I just want to go through a few ground rules for tonight, and then I'll make a few comments as chair. I am Dan Ozismere, chair of the BET. So in terms of the process tonight, we have the entire BET and our town controller, and we are here to listen attentively to you. We thank you all year when you attend our meetings and you listen to us talk and discuss and debate. This is your night where we listen and you speak. So again, thank you. In terms of how people can listen, we have everyone here in person. People can also watch this through Zoom, Greenwich TV, and YouTube. And there will also be a recording available, I believe, within 7 days. In terms of how individuals can participate in terms of making comments, there are two ways they can do that. One is you are here tonight, and if you haven't signed in yet, please do so, and you'll be speaking. And then we also have an online form. We've gotten over 20 over 100 online comments already, even, although the meeting hasn't ended. So there's a lot of ways to participate and make your comments. I will also make a few comments, as chair here. There's been a lot of debate in the last week about whether or not we should have had this meeting as hybrid or not. And I first want to say that this is not a partisan issue. There are many members of my Republican caucus that felt this should be a hybrid meeting. And obviously there are many members of the Democratic caucus that felt the same way. They're not wrong in any way. Having a hybrid meeting would have been a good solution as well. But I really felt strongly that this is a meeting that's been scheduled for over 6 months. To me, this is a very important meeting that we do in person. And I recall when I started on the RTM, I attended this meeting 12 years ago, and it was a chance to meet a lot of people I would have never met otherwise, meeting people from both sides of the aisle. And it's a very special meeting, and this is the one time a year besides the Budget Committee where the full BET will hear directly from you. And again, my concern was that if we do these meetings hybrid, would we have the same attendance? In 2 or 3 years, would it go down to a situation where, most of the speakers are online? And then at what point does the BET say, well, look, we care, we want to listen, but we can do that from home as well? And I don't think for this meeting, that is not where I felt I wanted to go. So if you don't like that solution, I'll take the heat. It was my decision. It's not, as chair, and it was just something that I felt was right. Does that mean in the future things may or may not change? Technology is an important thing we need to consider, and the future may or may not be different. But again, I thank you for attending tonight. So now getting into the exact ground rules here, we had a situation where there was some concern that, people with disabilities, could not make this meeting. Obviously, it's cold and we want people to be safe. So we will start the meeting. There are 2 individuals that will be speaking from hybrid. Then I'm going to ask any students in the audience that want to speak to raise their hands and identify themselves, and we'll make sure they have a chance to speak second and get home and do their homework. And then after that, we will go through the sign-in sheets. In the sign-in sheets, the organization will be general budget, all topics. Then we'll go to town operating, then school operating, then town capital, school capital, and then we'll finish with ARP, which is a new topic for tonight. Nisha Aurora, our clerk, will be announcing two names, the speaker and the speaker after that, and everyone will have 3 minutes. So thank you all very much for attending. Jenny, can we start with the online speakers?
Yes, yes, I'd like to recognize Alan Gunsberg to speak. Could you please unmute yourself? And you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, members of the BET. My name is Alan Gunsberg. I've lived in Coscob for the past 25 years. I previously served the town of Greenwich as a member and the chairman of the board of Greenwich Human Services. And I currently serve the town as the chairman of the First Selectmen's Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities. I am the person who made the complaint that tonight's meeting was not accessible. Title II of the federal ADA law requires a town to protect the civil rights of the residents with disabilities and to provide town meetings in a format that people with disabilities can attend. I would like the record tonight to note that I asked for an accessible and inclusive meeting, but instead all I got was included. I was told this is because of tradition. I would have preferred to not have to identify myself as a disabled man this evening, just because I needed an accommodation. Instead, I would have preferred to be included as a resident, a community member, a taxpayer, and most importantly, a voter, just like everyone else. But I remind you, the people who are allowed to give testimony this evening on Zoom have all been required to request an accommodation from the town. And because this is a public meeting, every town resident watching, listening, and attending now knows we Zoomers today are persons with disabilities. Again, I asked the reason why, and the answer is tradition. I am here today to voice my support for all things accessible and inclusive. Without accessibility and inclusion, we might as well call ourselves a city instead of a town or a community. I am in support of accessible school buildings, accessible transportation, accessible sidewalks, accessible parks, town programs, and accessible communications. These upgrades are good things to do. They're the right things to do. And the town is required to do them by law. Thank you for your time. I yield.
Stephanie Cowie, would you please unmute yourself?
Good evening, Chairman Ozesmir and BET members. My name is Steph Cowie. I live in Greenwich as well. I'm here this evening in support of the Board of Ed, Capital Budget, and Parks and Rec. As the co-president of GHSPTA, I'm here to thank you for your swift approval of the A&E funding for Central Middle School. You are now faced with OG and JC's capital funding requests. We cannot pass these schools over yet another year. Please approve the Board of Ed requests of $1.5 million each at OG and JC for A&E work to support the much needed ADA compliance, security, HVAC, flooding mitigation, and lack of learning spaces. Additionally, as the First Selectman Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities Vice Chair, we are in full support of Parks and Rec's ADA Master Plan. We need to remove all barriers for people with disabilities for access. By completing this ADA Master Plan, the town of Greenwich will be more inclusive and accessible for all. We ask that this request be funded. And speaking of inclusiveness, Chairman Ozesmir accommodation for only those with a disability to speak via Zoom has fallen so very short. Just because you provided an accommodation, that doesn't make it inclusive. Because I am only one of 2 participating by hybrid, you all now know that I have a disability. And if anyone knows anything about me, I generally don't want my disability to be my lead into any room. You have taken away the most important part of what it means to be inclusive. I hope that in the future, the BET thinks more of inclusiveness, possibly making that a new tradition. Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Debbie Coleman, followed by Barbara Ormerod Glenn.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Coleman of RTM District 10 and a member of the Budget Overview Committee. I'm here tonight to ask the BET to cut from the capital budget the expenditure of $2.8 million proposed for the bump outs for fiscal year 22-23. The public has never had an opportunity to comment on the appropriateness of the bump outs. When asked why bump outs were constructed, we were told they were constructed for added pedestrian safety. In fact, the opposite seems to be true. It's difficult for pedestrians to navigate the bump outs, especially with plantings, which decrease visibility for oncoming traffic. Bicyclists take their lives in their hands when they try to navigate and compete with vehicles for narrower lanes. Fire trucks and emergency vehicles find it more difficult to navigate around the bumps, increasing what could be crucial response time. There are many other priorities in the town other than bump outs that funds can be used for. Based on a consensus recommendation, if you want to improve safety, use the funds to put police officers back on Greenwich Avenue. With increased out-of-state traffic, pedestrian crossings are now being ignored and now potentially dangerous. Increase the number of parking spots on the avenue so that you can eliminate the need to spend wasted time driving around needlessly to find that spot. So by having bump outs, we reduce more parking spots. With the approval of outdoor dining on Greenwich Avenue, 60 parking spots will now be eliminated. We are desperately in need
Maybe if you get closer.
Just don't give me any more right now. You hold on to it.
Now it sounds good. Okay, thank you.
There's a little white hockey puck. No, it should be up here. No, yeah, everything? Okay, that coach, you put it on, you go to the executive session, so you know.
Should I begin? Yeah, it's on. Okay. In conclusion, we are desperately in need of more parking on Greenwich Avenue, and we should be diverting funds from bump outs for these needs. I would like to thank the BET for allowing me to voice my opinion and those of others who oppose bump outs. Thank you very much.
Next is Barbara Glenn, followed by Brooks Harris. If we could ask the next speaker to also just line up so we can save a few minutes.
And also just to mention, no clapping, please, just because it does slow things down. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the BET. I'm Barbara Ormerod Glynn, Director of Greenwich Library, and I'm here this evening to request that you approve the $50,000 in the CIP budget to fund upgrades to the library's Innovation Lab. There are factors you may not have been aware of when the full BET voted. Greenwich Library was created to promulgate the spread of knowledge to the entire community and to nurture creative, lifelong learners with free and equal access to the tools needed to become productive citizens. It is in support of this ideal that Greenwich Library created an innovation lab to support creative STEAM interests for residents of all ages who could explore and use the emergent but established technologies. Interest in the lab is strong. Over 1,400 residents receive alerts to the lab's activities, open houses, virtual programs, small group classes, and in-person help. Year-to-date, 45 programs have attracted 800 individuals. Public access to the software and hardware to design and fabricate objects are part of our strategic plan and help us to achieve 4 important goals. The first goal is to promote literacy in all forms, in this case, computer and digital literacy. The small innovative lab, which is only 300 square feet, offers 3D printers, a 3D scanner, a 360-degree camera, Z-Space, which is an augmented reality 3D experience, a laser cutter and engraver, VR devices, and circuitry kits that can be borrowed and used in virtual training sessions. The lab has programs for resident tinkerers of all ages, and many Saturday programs are geared towards families so that parents also can learn new technologies. The second goal is to complement and extend the elementary and middle school makerspaces and the Greenwich High School proprietary in-lab so that equipment is available to residents days, evenings, and weekends at the library, which is open 72 hours a week. The third goal is to offer digital equity and to bridge the digital divide for the underserved in our community. Private schools in town have extensive innovative labs, and the library's aim is to offer some of the same technologies, although granted on a much smaller scale. Recent users include CCI students who attended 6 summer sessions, a local Girl Scout troop, and some Eagle Hill students. The fourth is to support development of 21st century workforce skills for our youth and for any resident seeking to learn new skills. I cannot emphasize enough that up-to-date equipment, which is faster with advanced features, is critical to the success of the lab. So I hope this brief outline of the Innovation Lab goals and services give you a broader perspective on the importance of our request for $50,000 for fiscal 22-23, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions. I also wanted... Perfect. I also would like to mention that we have a supporter here, and I wonder if she might go next. That would be Abby Ratner from CCI.
Has she signed in?
Abby? No?
No. Okay.
I
We
didn't sign in
can,
for her.
if
I
she
didn't
could
think I
sign in, we could try to accommodate her as soon as we can. My apologies. Thank you.
Brooks Harris is next, followed by Laura Darren.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the BET. Thanks for this opportunity to speak tonight about the capital budget. I'm Brooks Harris, and although I'm chair of the RTM Finance Committee, my comments tonight are my own views. Greenwich has a tremendous amount of capital spending proposed over the next 5 to 10 years. And while we are a wealthy community, the magnitude of spending is large, even relative to our resources. As such, we must first fund what we really need before we start spending on things which are just nice to have. We must err on the side of caution, given what is to come. Most everyone agrees we have to invest in our schools, and this budget laudably makes material commitment to that with major funding for Old Greenwich, Julian Curtis, and Riverside, as well as an acceleration of the rebuild of CMS. But these investments do not explain the explosion in capital spending. The current capital budget shows spending of almost $125 million per year over the next 5 years. This is 2.5 times our historical average of about $50 million per year. If we spend anywhere near this level, not only will taxes and debt go up, but there will be pressure to open the Pandora's box of long-term debt, which will only accelerate our financial predicament. Even if we strip the school projects out of the capital budget, we are still averaging over $96 million per year, and that's about twice our historical average. I'm also concerned about our budget because it doesn't account for inflation, which is running at historically high levels, particularly for construction and other capital spending. And there's no contingency if remediation becomes a bigger issue than expected, or if we need to fund affordable housing to comply with state mandates. These items have the potential to dramatically impact an already stretched budget. We need to be more disciplined in how we evaluate spending, break out the highest priority items, safety, schools, including HVAC and ADA, and maintenance. While we should sanity check these to make sure we're paying the right amount, we should not skimp on these necessities. Next, we need to right-size the schools. We currently have over $235 million in the budget over the next 5 years for renovation and expansion. Renovations, yes, as needed. Expansion, I'm not sure, and if enrollment is projected to decline, we must also ensure our schools are properly scaled to our needs. I want to credit Fred and the BET for recognizing the need to consider capital spending holistically rather than dealing with it year by year. The newly formed bipartisan BET committee looking at the capital budget is a step in the right direction, but they're just getting started and have much work to do. Given the frightening numbers in our current capital budget, we should have a moratorium on nice-to-have items until we are confident we can fund the need-to-have items. Sorry, Greenwich Avenue bump outs and Bible Street pickleball courts. We need to get it right for our kids, our safety, and the upkeep of what we already have before we mortgage the future of this town. Thank you.
Laura Darren, followed by Cheryl Sabraro.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to provide comments. My name is Laura Darren, and I'm a resident of nearly 30 years in this community. I distinctly remember my very first day walking down Greenwich Avenue 30 years ago. It was a Saturday, and the streets was bustling with shoppers and strollers enjoying the day. I made the fateful mistake that all newbies make when attempting to cross the street without waiting for the go-ahead from the police officer. I got scolded, bystanders chuckled, and life went on. The police presence on Greenwich Avenue was comforting and made our town distinctive, but that ship has sailed. We replaced the safety of police crossing guards with bump outs. First one, then 3 more proposed, and many more slated to be built. The Elm Street bump out was built despite tremendous opposition by residents, property owners, and merchants. To my knowledge, there was no posted studies done or questions answered. A website called Greenwich Ave Streetscapes was intended as a platform for public feedback, yet no one can see any of this feedback, despite asking repeatedly. Was this even given to you all for your review? The bump outs cause, in my opinion, confusion, blind spots, and loss of parking. They are dangerous. They make turns difficult, especially for larger cars and emergency vehicles. They create poor visibility. They force drivers to accelerate unnecessarily to get up and over the bump. They push pedestrians into intersections, jeopardizing pedestrian safety. My friend, who has been on crutches for the past 3 months, tells me that bump outs are much harder to navigate due to the steep varying heights in the sidewalks. Think about also how dangerous it is for a bicycle to ride up and through our narrowed intersection. They create fewer parking spaces, making competition for spots more aggressive. They cause congestion due to sharper angles, making it more difficult to turn. The aesthetics are short-lived, the paint fades, the flower beds are not properly cared for. To pay for these unnecessary bump outs, the projected cost to taxpayers is close to $4 million over the next 3 years, excluding inflation and additional money for maintenance. I urge you to kill the bump outs and put that money toward more vital projects. From what I'm hearing tonight, there are many. Thank you very much.
Cheryl Sabraro, followed by Alyssa Kaleshian.
Thank you so much for letting me give my opinion to the Board of Estimation Taxation. Thank you. My name is Cheryl Sabaro, and I have lived in Greenwich for over 25 years, and I'm raising my 4 children here. I'm a member of District 10 and an alternate on the Education Committee. I urge the BET not to waste money on bump outs, although for me, this is more than just the cost of the bump outs. Even if the bump outs were free, I would not want them. Bump outs make parking a hassle for the busy people of Greenwich. This has the effect of reducing customers for merchants and creating a headache for busy people looking to quickly park and grab a cup of coffee or run a quick errand. We can all agree that bump outs are not a must-have item, I do not think they are even a nice-to-have improvement because they are making our town worse, not better. Greenwich Avenue is lined with trees and has planter boxes everywhere, in addition to pots overflowing with flowers hanging from all the light poles. I do not think we need gardens jutting into the road on every corner on top of that, and I am a member of Green Fingers. Spending money to make conditions for residents and merchants on the avenue worse, traffic, parking problems, cars circling longer, more emissions and less business for our merchants seems foolish to me. Greenwich has enormous capital needs, and bump outs are not one of them. People move to Greenwich, Connecticut for the schools, not the bump outs. Let's not waste money to make our town worse. Thank you for your time.
Alyssa Kaleshian, followed by Kira Lynch.
Members of the BET. I am a lifelong resident and commercial property owner in the downtown. I believe I speak for many, if not all, of the property owners when I say that we are in favor of the efforts to beautify the avenue and keep it safe for our children, ourselves, residents, and visitors. However, the bump out plans, as seen on Greenwich Streetscape, something like that, show a drastic reduction in parking that needs to be addressed with supplemental parking before construction commences. The removal of accessible parking spaces pushes our residents and visitors to shop online and stroll elsewhere, equaling a barren downtown and not the vibrant town we so desire. There has been a long-known issue, maybe since the 40s, of needing to resolve the well-documented parking shortage in town, and this project will further contribute to that problem. Residents and visitors come from all local regions, Backcountry, Glenville, OG, Riverside, and they won't be riding bikes or motorcycles, as the plan takes into consideration, to pick up kids from school, get their hair done, pick up groceries, buy gifts, or eat out. Where is the credible research that supports this narrative from comparable towns to Greenwich? Please vote to not have one single parking space removed by the bump outs until we build parking structures. Please request that the public feedback from the GreenwichStreetscape.com be made public and a part of your decision. Thank you.
Kira Lynch, followed by Gabby Ratner.
Good evening. My name is Kira Lynch, and I would like to speak to you about why I think it's an honor and a privilege to serve as an elected leader. Let me begin by saying we are all experiencing the effects of historical rates of inflation and high gas prices. Residents are leaving Connecticut for fiscally responsible and friendlier states, and those states are thriving. You are a team that stands in the front lines to protect our town. It is unfathomable that we are not prioritizing fixing our schools first. The bump outs on Greenwich Avenue are nothing more than an idea by a group of people that are assigned to a committee and not elected. Their mission is to reimagine Greenwich. Let me ask you, why do we need to reimagine Greenwich? What is the long-term goal? No one in this town wants to reimagine Greenwich. Frankly, we like it just the way it is, and that's why we chose to live here. Bump outs are not safe. They're difficult to navigate, they cost money to maintain, and the cost will increase with inflation. In fact, we'd like the first bump out ripped out. I don't care if the money came from a grant. It is still funded by taxpayers, and that grant comes with strings attached. Why is it that we can't just say, no, thanks? Greenwich has other priorities and issues to focus on. We count on our elected officials to be the leaders and stand strong to protect our town. I am personally making it my mission to spread the word about how money is being spent in the budget, especially how it's being wasted. I can confidently say for the first time in a long time, I am seeing Democrats, independents, and Republicans find common ground. We are aware, we are watching, And the great thing about being an elected official is that you can be voted out of office if the people don't like the direction you're taking our town. And it is very empowering. America is at a turning point, heading towards some very difficult times. Let's see our elected leaders protect our town so that we are prepared when things inevitably become worse. Thank you for your time.
Gabby Ratner, followed by Beth McGlivery.
Good evening. My name is Gabby Ratner, and I'm the Executive Director of Community Centers, Inc. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Innovation Lab at Greenwich Library. From their inception, libraries have existed to share resources with those who cannot afford to acquire them for themselves, and to be a central square for sharing those discoveries with others. First there were books, then artwork, then libraries added computer access, meeting spaces, and now makerspaces. What is a makerspace? It's the perfect combination of art and science, research and creation, comprising state-of-the-art laser printers, 3D printers, virtual reality equipment, design software. The Innovation Lab offers young and old alike the opportunity to imagine, research, and then produce arts and crafts, even if, like me, they cannot draw or sculpt. Makerspaces empower children and youth to be creative and think outside the box. They foster collaboration and innovation. They engage young people in real-time discussion and exploration of the connection between ideas and the possibility of realization of those ideas. And they train youngsters for the digital economy they will enter as adults. Makerspaces are costly, but they can also be life-changing. I know this from both personal and professional experience. My son was privileged to use one of the early makerspaces that were set up as private membership businesses where people could come to use the equipment. Since then, he's built or restored 3D and laser printers, used them to assist in school projects, home repairs, and to make small pieces of art. This kind of equipment has informed his creativity and his future. Next year, he will become a freshman at Rochester Institute of Technology, which, as I understand it, is just one big makerspace. Underprivileged children, such as those CCI serves, do not have access to these places as a rule. Their wealthier neighbors can explore at Mac Inspires and other fantastic innovation places throughout Fairfield County. Our children cannot. In response, for the past 2 summers, even during the pandemic, Greenwich Library's Innovation Lab opened its doors to CCI kids. Under the creative guidance and leadership of Vanessa Harrington, they've created jewelry, keychains, holiday ornaments, mugs, and cars. They learn coding. What can be more valuable than helping a child create? I'm going to close with their comments, not mine. It's way better than being locked up in a house or on video games or something like that, said one student. At least here you can create something different and unique. I think it's useful because they're telling you to be creative about what you do. If you don't have any creativity, the world is so boring. I urge you to restore funding for this invaluable resource and to help the library usher in the next generation of innovators. And thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Just hold on. I'd just like to mention one thing. Just looking at the sign-ins, I think it's great that there are many people that are, want to speak on certain issues, and I think that's great. I would just ask you to consider everyone's entitled to the full 3 minutes, but certainly if you feel others have covered some of your points, you might consider, emphasizing your agreement with them and perhaps adding new points that you have. Just a consideration. Thank you.
Beth McGlivery, followed by Mita Spilo.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am Beth McGilvery, a 20-year resident of D7 Glenville. I am here tonight to ask you to review very carefully the current budget with greater scrutiny. Upon reviewing the First Selectman's capital budget, I noted he had a number of approximately 86 million. The BET has reduced it to about 78 million. The highest number in the last 5 years was 62.2 million. We're way above that. If you look at the average in the last 5 years of our budget, it was almost $47 million. What is happening? Why such a balloon?
Are we putting down a lot of wants and not needs? So I was looking over, I don't know if this is a negotiating strategy to just put it all down there, shoot for the moon, and if you get halfway, you're pretty good. But I think we should really take a strong look at exactly, I just picked out some things I saw in the budget. Wood chipper, $80,000. And I'm coming from the place of when you get your Amex bill, you're like, how's it so big? And then you realize, I have a little here, a little here, a little here, a little here, and it all adds up. So here are those little things that might just keep adding up. We have sidewalks, $450,000. We have $300,000, page 29, $300,000, 29 new traffic signal software and hardware. Page 33, $500,000, new lights in Glenville. Lights in Glenville. Glenville has a pizzeria at night. We have $2.8 million for bump outs, growing to $6 million. We have $500,000 for an extra project after a bridge was done at Hillside. $2 million going to $16 million for highway maintenance. $3.1 million for sidewalks on Route 1. $750,000 for another sidewalk on Shore Road. $380,000 for a Board of Ed parking lot. $285,000 for changing lights to LED in town buildings. There's $600,000 to demolish a horseneck building. $50,000 to reimagine Sherwood Baldwin Park. That's going to go to $12.5 million for a new park. $30,000 for employee bathroom renovation at Bruce Museum. So there's a long list of different items that I was just curious about. As a taxpayer, I am asking the BET to follow the guidelines. They were given a $70 million guideline, which is still higher than our highest year in the past 5 years. Continue to make cuts and look at needs, not wants. Thank you very much.
Mita Spilo, followed by Joe Solari.
Respected members of the BET, thank you for your service and thank you for your time. I'm Mita Spilo. I'm committed to lowering taxes. Households and businesses are hurting. Out-of-control spending by the Biden administration and Democrat Congress has created national inflation at close to 10%. Simultaneously, Hartford's onerous regulations and policies are choking supply chains and have exploded the cost of household necessities, particularly food and gas, by 10 to 50%. Meanwhile, revaluations of real estate in Greenwich have increased real property taxes by 8 to 20% in moderate income communities of Byram, Chickahominy, Pembroke, and Glenville. At the same time, Governor Lamont and his Democrat-controlled Connecticut legislature are pushing a state property tax that will further burden families and businesses. We must stand with our neighbors and reduce local and state taxes. After Ida flooding, I'm also in support of the proposed stormwater and sewer projects to protect Greenwich's infrastructure and homes. Our neighbors are counting on our support to get them back into their homes. School buildings and academic excellence should be a priority, and I would like to see the CMS project prioritized and moved along as quickly as possible. I also support the necessary HVAC projects in schools. Children need to develop skills to succeed in life. Spending on CRT or SEL personnel or classes should be curtailed. I understand the school administration will receive almost $10 million in ARP funding, and I expect full transparency on the spending. Elected officials forcing upon residents their version of our town should be paused. Reimagine and beautification projects require planning, community input, and prudent spending. Therefore, the BET should postpone any funding to redesign and reconstruct intersections on Greenwich Avenue or elsewhere in town. I urge you instead to prioritize essential school projects such as CMS and Old Greenwich, and sewers and infrastructure, and In terms of long-term capital budget, I urge town officials to carefully prioritize so that we do not need to increase taxes and long-term debt to accomplish our goals. Thank you.
Joe Solari, followed by David Chess.
Good evening, BET. My name is Joe Solari, and I'm here to strongly urge the BET to employ our budget to protect Greenwich and our citizens and businesses from policies that threaten our liberty and our way of life. To protect Greenwich from Hartford by being a prudent steward of our tax dollars. To resist the clarion call of long-term debt, a call our town leaders vowed never again to heed after flirting with bankruptcy in the 1930s. To get us a return on our investment of our tax dollars, to help us maintain and advance our quality of life, not to follow bad policies from Hartford. In short, to keep Greenwich Greenwich. And as I understand it, only a small but very vocal minority tied to out-of-town interests favor the state to force Greenwich and our residents to accept the latest state Hartford pay-for-play schemes, be it transit development or 830G-related developments that would fundamentally change the nature of Greenwich. We do not want the character of Greenwich Avenue to be forced to morph over time into a small city outdoor shopping mall with chain restaurants and big buildings. Rather than another costly study, and we all know where those inevitably lead, we'd like to see a multi-year vision for Greenwich Avenue in our town first. We want our town to stand up to Democrats in Hartford, their attempts to steal more of our money, be it through taxation or development initiatives. It's a playbook that's played out across other states and other towns, and we cannot allow it to happen here too. Finally, concerned Greenwich parents across every district in town fervently believe and desire education for achievement, not indoctrination for children, and not at the expense of parental rights. We have the highest educational budget that gets higher every year, and for what? Lower test scores, lower enrollment, irrational and discriminatory COVID and CRT mandated policies, identity politics in this classroom. The buck stops here. Spend the money to fund the good stuff and stop funding the bad before it's too late. So in closing, let's keep Greenwich Greenwich. Let's fight back against those trying to turn it into Stamford or New Rochelle. Make sure our budget reflects our goals. Low taxes, great educational achievement, maintaining and enhancing Greenwich as the most desirable town to live, conduct business, and raise a family. Thank you.
David Chess, followed by Hillary Harosh.
Ladies and gentlemen of the BET, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is David Chass, and I am the president of Round Hill Volunteer Fire Company. As you know, we are the only all-volunteer firehouse in Greenwich. Many of you know me from our discussions over the last several years regarding the Round Hill Firehouse renovation. I'm pleased to say that despite tremendous COVID-related delays, we will be filing for our building permit later this week. Tonight, though, I'm here to speak to you about our annual allocation as part of the town's operational budget. For at least the last 5 years since I have been a volunteer, we submit our annual budget request of $100,000 and receive only $60,000 to $65,000. Despite efforts, we have never had the opportunity to advocate for our full funding. For more than 25 years, both Round Hill and Banksville receive funding from the town. In the latest budget, Round Hill received $66,000, while Banksville received $151,000, nearly 2.5 times as much as Round Hill. Over the last 21 years, Round Hill has received less than $1.1 million, while Banksville has received more than $2.7 million. Why is this the case? No one seems to know. I have to believe it is simply inertia. Yet as both the president of Round Hill and as a taxpayer, this makes little sense. Round Hill is located in Greenwich, Banksville is not. Round Hill serves Greenwich exclusively, Banksville serves Greenwich, as well as Stamford, Bedford, and other parts of Westchester County. 100% of our responses are in Greenwich, while only 1/3 of Banksville's are, and we responded to twice as many calls in town as did Banksville. Round Hill receives funding from only Greenwich, and yet according to Banksville's tax returns, in addition to the $151,000 they receive from Greenwich, they have also received nearly $500,000 annually from other municipalities. Don't get me wrong, I'm not faulting Banksville in any way, shape, or form. Good for them for being so industrious. But we at Round Hill should not continue to be put in the position of having to fundraise $40,000 to $60,000 annually to keep the lights on. On top of that, we are in the middle of a capital campaign to raise $1 million for our portion of the renovation. And just around the corner, we'll be required to replace our engine, and that will likely cost more than $1 million as well. What we're asking today is two things. First, we are asking the BET to fully fund our budget request of $100,000 for fiscal 22-23, and to consider a second increase next year to $125,000. Second, that following the budget season, we sit down and have a more in-depth and serious discussion about the capital side of the budget. There are only so many times we can go back to our district with our hats in hand and explain why we must be both volunteer firefighters and volunteer fundraisers, and ask our community to provide for what their taxes do not. There's been a healthy discussion this year about the funding model for public-private partnerships and what the town should fund. You might look at RHVFC as one such partnership, but I would submit we are in a different category than the library, the Bruce, or other PPPs. While all these partnerships enhance Greenwich, our rule is absolutely essential. Without the firehouse and our volunteers, the town would have to build a new fire station and hire 12 new firefighters at a cost of millions. We are simply asking for $30,000 more. Thank you to all of you for your support of the volunteers. We are volunteering because we are committed to our community and committed to Greenwich. We are simply asking that you make it a little bit easier for us. Thank you.
Hillary Harosh, followed by Joseph Paya.
Hi there, my name is Hillary Harosh. I am an RTM in District 10, a delegate for Town Services, and a Greenwich resident for 19 years. I am concerned for the Round Hill Volunteer Fire Department. This important fire station has kind of been left on a dusty, forgotten shelf since a major town matrix study in November 2020. That study determined that the Round Hill station is actually in the perfect central location for fire safety in our district. The study was analyzing whether a brand-new, very expensive station was needed, proposed on King Street, but keeping the Round Hill station saved the town millions. The Round Hill Volunteer Firehouse is currently only dedicated, fully trained volunteers who provide a massive service for our town. They are left to fundraise completely on their own to make ends meet. The town does not cover their extremely low operating costs and is matching only 50% of their desperately needed firehouse renovation. They are saving lives and selflessly providing safety for a very large area of Greenwich, and they also serve the other areas of Greenwich when all the trucks are called in for big fires, a very important part of our town. Let me break down some average numbers. There are 8 stations in Greenwich total. 2, Round Hill and Banksville in New York, which serves many New York areas besides Greenwich, are volunteer only. So for a $16.8 million fire department budget requested for 2023, it's about $2.83 million per career staff station. Round Hill is asking for about $97,000. That's been approximately what they ask for each year, and they only get $67,000 approved. Why would the town not at least cover the lacking $30,000? Even Banksville's volunteer station is getting $151,000 from our town. That's more than double what Round Hill gets, and they respond to 70% less calls in Greenwich over the last 3 years. Someone please explain to me why the Round Hill station, which is so fiscally efficient, has their firefighters running around town begging for donations to just cover their operating expenses. We are talking about fires, car fires, dangerous down power lines, saving families from deadly silent carbon monoxide. It's not the Bruce Museum. Please let them focus on those important things in our town versus using them as fundraisers.
30 seconds.
My husband was a volunteer for the Round Hill station, and so I have firsthand knowledge about how hard these volunteers work for our town. And he had to help raise money. I helped him. The whole firehouse pitched in, but we could not raise enough. I am asking the members of the BET to please at least cover the full $97,000 of operating expenses for the Round Hill Firehouse. Please let the men and women there focus on public safety versus fundraising. Thank you.
Joseph Paya, followed by Ramya Hapley.
Hi, I'm speaking for Joseph Paya. We're just going to have one speaker for our group. Okay. Good evening. I'm Beth Eaton, and I'm the Commodore of the Old Greenwich Yacht Club. I'm representing over 300 Old Greenwich Yacht Club members, all of whom are town residents, most of whom are boaters with moorings in Greenwich Cove. There are about 300 resident moorings in Greenwich Cove, and we all pay a fee to the town for our moorings. We are requesting that the BET keep in the budget the next phase of dredging Greenwich Cove Channel. This dredging is maintenance, not performed in decades. Silting up of the channel is making it impossible for sailboats to access the town dock at low tide. Difficulty in hauling boats for storage in the town boatyard over winter is also happening. The storage in the boatyard is another revenue maker for the town. We are all charged for that. The opportunity to dredge is now while it is still allowed. Circumstances could change if this line item is removed, and it has to start going through the process again in several years. Money has already been spent on samples to get this far in the process. There's also the safety issue. There's an AED at the Old Greenwich Yacht Club Clubhouse. It is on the list to be mounted on the outside of the building adjacent to the town dock. Presently, a sailboat and perhaps a larger town police boat will have trouble coming into the dock at low tide in an emergency situation. We also now have the Todd's Point Sailing School, who's going to be operating this summer, so we're all concerned about their safety. All the members of the Old Greenwich Yacht Club, thank you very much for listening to our comments. Thank you and good evening.
Ramya Hopley, followed by Bob D'Angelo.
Hi, my name is Ramya Hopley. I'm a 22-year resident of Greenwich. I'm here to bring awareness to three important issues that impact Greenwich residents. First, fiscal responsibility and taxes. Greenwich residents are facing increased property taxes that will impact all residents. The Hartford legislature is pushing even higher taxes, property taxes that will further stress economically strapped Greenwich residents. We need to take into account the number of Greenwich residents who are classified as asset-limited and income-constrained but employed citizens, and many who qualify for free and reduced lunch programs. We need to change the direction that Connecticut is headed and encourage job creation and investment in the state and ensure fiscal responsibility. The state needs to remove burdensome taxes and regulation on small businesses that are the backbone of America. We have fewer people employed in the state today than in 1998, making Connecticut the sixth highest unemployed state in the country. In fact, we have fourth lowest rate of economic growth in the last 10 years, which is why businesses and families are leaving the state at a rapid rate. They're fleeing high taxes and government overreach. Second, academic excellence. We need to bring families and businesses back by focusing on academic excellence in our K-12 schools and remove politics out of budgeting. It is important to fund academic performance by focusing on reading, writing, grammar, math, and history. Our schools get top 5% of the resources, yet our English scores have fallen to 73% statewide, and our math scores have fallen down to 65%. In 2011, our test scores were 90th percentile. Aside from focusing on academic excellence, we also need to target our spending on central middle school infrastructure, Old Greenwich School renovation, and ensure the ADA compliance with increased handicap access rather than unnecessary spending on bump outs. Not only are the proposed bump outs on every intersection on the avenue, Byram and Old Greenwich, unnecessary, they remove badly needed parking, increase traffic congestion, and waste millions of hard-earned taxpayer dollars. Third, no American Rescue Plan funds to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I implore the BET to deny American Rescue Plan funding to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund was created with the goal of no public money being used and all funds coming from private donors. If we involve the ARP funds, developers don't finish the work and all documentation by 2026, the town will need to return money that will be in financial risk. This $1.1 million of ARP funds could be better spent on our school infrastructure. While affordable housing in Greenwich is well-intentioned, we need to keep in mind that until the 830G law is changed, no amount of money in the Affordable Housing Trust will get us closer to the 10% affordable housing and let us meet the moratorium requirement. When BET and RTM representation was removed from the draft ordinance, we are told that our representation was unnecessary. PNC needs to be accountable. Thank you for your time.
Bob D'Angelo, followed by Laura Darren already spoke. Jane Sprung.
Thank you, BET members, for your service to the town. My name is Bob D'Angelo, a Greenwich native and a guy that really loves to pedal a bicycle. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Pedal Greenwich Advocacy, group of hundreds of our member bicyclists who want to make Greenwich safe, friendly, and connected. By that, we mean the development of paths, protected bike lanes, and infrastructure to go short distances without having to jump in the car, to go to school, to go to work, grocery store, the gym, the park, and the train. A recent study by INRIX, a transportation data company, found that 48% of car trips in the USA metro areas are shorter than 3 miles. That's a 15-minute bike ride. For our youth, cycling represents a very important opportunity to gain and express their self-independence that all children desire and need for their life journey. So Pedal Greenwich supports the capital funding requests that seek to re-envision and enhance safety and accessibility for people who wish to reduce automobile dependency and relieve growing traffic congestion in our town. Most important is the Route 1 Hillside Bridge project, which the Selectmen's Bike Task Force requested an amount included a shared use path, not just a sidewalk, to help students bike to and from Greenwich High School. It is the beginning link of what could become an established east-west protected bike route. Sidewalks on Shore Road in Old Greenwich are also essential, which we believe could be designed as a shared use path so kids on bikes are not squeezed into traffic anymore. We understand the Budget Committee cut a project to refurb Todd's Driftway. That's a very dangerous choke point for bikers, pedestrians, and cars. DPW's highway maintenance line should always include analysis of how and if to accommodate non-motorized uses. Statistics show that towns that enable micromobility, which is infrastructure for biking, scootering, e-bikes, are where young families want to be. They are critical quality of life features that attract young families to a town they want to live in. This is also an opportunity to enhance our attractiveness to businesses also. The BET should not be where we debate features of each street and road project every year to make that happen. This is a vision for a bright, vibrant, safe, and connected community that should become a public works and planning policy and practice. Please help Greenwich seize the moment by funding projects that move us into the future with safe, context-sensitive streets for all users. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jane Sprung, followed by Peter Schweinfurth.
Good evening. My name is Jane Sprung. I'm from District 10, and I serve on the BOC. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on ARP and the proposed budget. First going to comment on ARP, and this is a comment on my own behalf. After Ida and the flood, I am in support of the proposed stormwater and sewer projects to protect Greenwich's infrastructure and homes. I have many friends who have still not been able to move back to their homes. Schools and educating our children should be the priority, and I'd like to see CMS project prioritized and moved along as quickly as possible. I also support the various ADA and HVAC projects at the schools. I'd like to see a detailed list of projects under in the 7.2 allocation from ARP. And I expect that this money will cover present and future projects and be fully transparent. I'm thinking we should reconsider the $950,000 to Nathaniel Witherall HVAC upgrade. And would prefer that this money was allocated to the schools or our town infrastructure. The town consistently allocates significant funds to Nathaniel Witherall with mixed results, and the future management of Nathaniel Witherall has not yet been resolved. Will the town be seeking public-private partnerships, looking for a buyer, or continuing to manage the facility? I feel that this upgrade can be addressed once some of these can be addressed through the regular budget process. I urge you not to appropriate all the funds to the Affordable Housing Trust. The Affordable Housing Trust was to be created and only funded by private funds. My understanding is that if a developer doesn't finish the work and all the documentation isn't complete by 2026, the town will need to return funds, which is a big risk. This is a significant amount of money, $1.1 million, which gives our schools, which given our school facility crisis, we should be spending that money on schools. We've just spent $1.75 on Central Middle School, and we have many more issues to address. I recognize that affordable housing and 830G are big concerns in Greenwich. If the town overrides concerns and allocates funds, I would want to see the amount reduced significantly as a one-time offering and requirements for matching ARP funds with private donations. There would also need to be transparency and accountability in the process of providing funds to private developers. Finally, it seems inappropriate to allocate one-time funds to personnel which will require additional annual funding. This includes public health educator, Tech Connect, Youth Services Bureau, admin, etc. We do not know if COVID will be a factor next year, and additional personnel with ongoing expenses should be considered or not in the normal budget process. The ARP money is not free money, and I urge you to prioritize and fix town infrastructure, school facilities, and not go towards special interest projects. Do I have any more time? No? Okay, thank you for your time.
Peter Schweinfurth, followed by Carl Grafasi.
Mr. Chairman, members of the BET, my name is Peter Schweinfurth. I'm here on behalf of the Energy Management Advisory Committee, which is the first select committee of which I am the chair. A little background, our purpose is to advise the selectmen on ways to improve energy efficiency and expand the use of renewable energy in electric vehicles to save more and pollute less. One concern of residents is poor air quality from local vehicle emissions. Introducing zero-emission electric vehicles to the town fleet will begin to address those concerns as well as provide an important signal to residents that the town is concerned about vehicle emissions also, as well as evidencing fiscal responsibility. More context, the parking services requested 2 Nissan Leaf electric vehicles for the current replacement cycle. The Nissan Leaf is one of the lower purchase price options for the parking services fleet. In addition, the Nissan Leaf operating costs are substantially below those for internal combustion engine powered vehicles. The Consumer Reports estimates that the Nissan Leaf costs just 3.5 cents per mile, or less than half of the cost of the most fuel-efficient four-door car they have tested, which is the Toyota Prius. Furthermore, maintenance of an electric vehicle is substantially lower compared to an ICE or a hybrid vehicle. The current budget request is for only 2 vehicles for parking services at a total fleet of approximately 280 vehicles. Purchase of these vehicles will provide important experience-related data for the fleet department to understand as it considers the replacement needs of the fleet over the coming decade. Secondly, Department of Public Works and the Buildings Construction and Maintenance Division has requested $82,500 for fiscal 2023 for the design of a solar PV parking canopy system at the Horseneck lot. This would be divided into conceptual phase of $20,000 and a detailed design phase $62,500. The installation of a solar canopy system will provide significant clean renewable electricity for town usage, as well as provide protection and shading for parked cars and reduced heat island effect for the lot and environs. The conceptual design phase would include geotechnical studies to determine the suitability of the lot. 30 seconds. Tentative economic analysis shows a significant positive NPV of any system. However, in anticipation of the Boys and Girls Club of Greenwich entering a 2-year lease for the former temporary Horseneck Fire Station buildings, we do not believe that the Phase 2 portion of the request is warranted. However, we do support Phase 1, trying to get it in 30 seconds. We believe that now is an appropriate time to commission both informal and formal studies for the development of the Horseneck parking lot. Thank you.
Next is Carl Grafasi, followed by Nancy Chapin.
Okay, I'm going to explain this as best I can in a short time. But if you want to see pictures, go to humberwickbloodpetition.com. Okay? And there's a QR code on there too. Okay. Anyways, I just want to thank you guys, BET, DWP, for taking the time and the patience to recognize the long overdue need to correct the drain issue that runs under Pemberwick Park to Caroline's Pond, and an additional funding for Den Road as well. However, just want to raise awareness, this is like one of 3 pieces of the pie that all, create this flooding issue. One of them is West Lyons Farm. It used to be a farm. Okay, now they put a development up there, East and West Lyons Farm. It's a large contributor to the water and runoff through the ravine where water goes down the drain through Pemberwick Park, not to mention other developing that's happened over the years as well. They have these retention and detention ponds. They're always full to the top. And that's not what the purpose of those are. I understand the town is short-staffed after talking to a few people like Jim Michaels and his team, offering availability to basically check those retention and detention ponds. So I've offered every 6 months, if there was somebody from West Lyons Farm, a representative, to do a walkthrough, and I've offered my time with the punch list that's put together by a third party that specializes in maintenance and retention and detention ponds. And I'm only offering this because, again, I've been told that they do routine checkups, and they clearly don't. And go to that website, picture's worth 1,000 words. Number 2, there's a trash rack that's in front of the drain that comes down the ravine. I call it, it's a shark cage, is what it is. That's what I call it. And it looks like somebody took rebar and welded it in their garage and just dropped it in front of there. It's not a proper trash rack. The other part is the actual drain that runs from the baseball diamond under the park to Caroline's Pond. I call it a straw. Okay, that was probably put in, they can't even tell me when it was put in, frankly.
30 seconds.
Thank you. It needs to be expanded and made bigger, and again, we're getting the funding for that. I just want to call out one more thing. My insurance went from $900 to $4,000 annually since we've been flooded. Okay, homes' values are dropping because of this, and in most cases, people that live there, that's like a retirement, investment for them. That's not good. That's not acceptable. And this was all caused from flooding that wasn't from the river. It was from the retention and detention ponds and more. Thank you very much.
Nancy Chapin, followed by Lucia Jansen.
Good evening. Nice to see all your faces. I'm here to speak in support of the master plan for Pomerantz and Tuckman. I've written to you, and you've also received letters of overwhelming support from the Greenwich Botanical Center, the Greenwich Community Gardens, and the Greenwich Tree Conservancy. I also have spoken to Ableist, who also expressed their overwhelming support. A plan for a very valuable town asset, $40,000. This will go a long way. It will direct staff. I'm not very comfortable speaking in front of this, so am I too close? Okay. It will direct staff. It will direct, resources. It will, I know you had to cut a line item out of your budget for a bathroom. A master plan would help understand, is this a valuable item in the budget? It will also allow these nonprofits to do fundraising, very important as well. So I urge you, please keep a plan in the budget. I understand there may be concern for the long-range funding, and I'm fresh off a committee that was tasked to implement the Binney Park Master Plan. This was a huge success. We worked very cohesively with town staff. We were able to raise funds. We were able to use the foundation to take in funds. This item will do this for this variable town asset. And I'll remind you that it was 20 years ago, Lolly Prince's Selectmen Committee that called for, when we acquired these properties, a master plan. 20 years we're waiting, time is right. We've got staff that I would hate to lose. We've got Joe Siciliano with historic knowledge. I'm so thankful you put this in this budget. Let's get this done. We've been waiting, it's time. Thank you. Wish I was better at this.
Lucia Jansen, followed by Abby Large.
Good evening. Lucia Jansen, Chair of the RTM Budget Overview Committee. The BET Budget Committee recommended budget exceeds both the BET's own fiscal year 23 budget guidelines as well as the BOC's fiscal year 23 budget goals in three important areas. Spending. Unfortunately, currently both the Board of Ed and town did not meet department targets. The town exceeded the 2.65% goal, coming in at 3.16 or 3.9 million over goal. The Board of Ed exceeds 2.25% target at 2.82%, exceeded by 290,000. The second excess is in headcount. Given the rise in inflation, we will likely see higher inflationary labor costs. We, as we stated in our letter, highly encourage a review once again of the allocation of resources to keep our headcount flat. Third is the capital budget. The recommended budget far exceeds the 70 million target, currently at 78.6 million. We know there are difficult choices, but we do ask for a re-look at the priorities. The economic conditions, when the BET and the RTM BOC developed its respective target goals, were designed, have only become more uncertain with high inflation and with the global crisis with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Please keep to your stated targets and work within the original fiscal year 23 limits. Thank you.
Abby Large, followed by Donna Zeal.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. We first want to thank you very much for your hard work and commitment to our town. It's really appreciated, and it does not go unnoticed. My name is Abby Large, and I am the co-chair of the Glenville Beautification Task Force, along with my team standing next to me, Karen Matrinik, Andrea Bloom, Eric Schwartz, Matt, as well as Matt Pop, as well as many supporters that are here tonight, requesting your support for the line item listed as $500,000 for the Glenville Lighting Project. It is important to know that this amount is separate and distinct from the CMAQ project funding, and it represents a private-public partnership. Commitments without naming rights from business leaders and community members for matching contributions with a value of $250,000 are already in hand. So, the town will ultimately contribute only half of the $500,000 for the lighting project. The timing for inclusion in this year's budget is essential. The roadways will be open for the Glenville Corridor project, and this is a unique time to place underground conduits, wiring, and lights in a cost-efficient manner. Once the construction is complete, we have lost the opportunity to place historic lighting, to improve pedestrian safety and walkability, help define and energize the central business district, and aid in traffic calming. This really is once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Glenville. So I can't stress enough the economic importance of the timing. It must be in this year's budget. We were asked by the town to plan a project to dovetail with the road work. The goal was to leverage the construction disruptions in a way that would enhance the neighborhood. We accepted the challenge. And for nearly 18 months, we have come together as a community and met with DPW, Planning and Zoning, Architectural Review Board, Greenwich Historical Society, the Selectman's Office, and held a community Zoom. We have forged working partnerships above what anyone thought was possible, and the community is excited to support the first step in this much-needed enhancement. As a public-private partnership, this project will be the seed for our ongoing mission to help beautify this area. We are now asking you to work with us to fulfill this partnership. by approving the budget line item for the lighting. With your help, along with our wonderful community of nonprofits, scouts, and volunteer groups, we can begin to realize the community goals of the Pemberwick-Glenville Neighborhood Plan. Thank you for your support.
Donna Zeal, followed by Katie DeLuca.
Good evening. I'm Donna Zeal. I'm an RTM member from District 9. I'm speaking on my own behalf. As a District 9 member, RTM member for years, I recognize our need to keep down the mill rate. I recognize the responsibility we have when we spend tax dollars. I also see what the capital budget is for this year and the future. We have had a very successful mechanism in the past to raise funds, the public-private partnership. This is what this is about. I know about that. I was the fundraiser for the Benheim Western Civic Center and raised the money to get that building done. These public-private partnerships are very important. This committee has raised a significant amount of money to get this project through. If you do not include the funding in this budget, you are sending a message to every public-private partnership that exists now and in the future. With the capital projects that we have going forward, we need this kind of mechanism. I ask you to support this in your budget. Thank you.
Katie DeLuca, followed by Liz Johnson.
Hi, good evening. Oh, can you hear me? Good evening, everybody. My name is Katie DeLuca, and I am the Director of the Planning and Zoning Department. And I am here to support the project that has just been spoken about in Glenville. It is a beautification project. This started years ago when we completed the 2017 Glenville-Pemberwick Plan, followed up a few years later with the 2019 Plan of Conservation and Development, where the primary focus in that plan, as you recall, was enhancement of neighborhoods and protection of neighborhoods. A few years later, through the hard work of DPW, they were able to get the congestion mitigation and air quality grant approved. And this project is a piggyback on that. It is separate and apart, but this project is a beautification project, as you've heard. The timing of this is critical because the roads will be opened up. I could come and speak to you about all kinds of projects that are in the capital budget, but this one in particular I wanted to speak about and to support the group because we've been meeting literally for years, and we've talked about through the planning process how we can do these kinds of projects. And as you've heard, the timing of this is very important. So I don't usually come before you for that reason and speak about capital projects, but I do think this one, given the timing and all of the bits and pieces of it and the amount of time that we've spent doing this, starting with the plans from 2017, this plan now, and the 18 months that we've met, we are at the finish line, and we just need this one little bit to push us over, and it really would be a shame if it didn't go through at this time. So thank you so much for your time.
Liz Johnson, followed by Dustin Dowry.
I'm here to advocate for the sidewalks on Shore Road. I'm an Old Greenwich resident, and I've been riding my bike down Shore Road for the last 34 years. Boy, am I tired. I've observed, in that time, I've observed great changes in residents' lifestyles, traffic volume, traffic patterns, and driver attitudes along Shore Road, and I feel very strongly a sidewalk is needed for public safety. Until the 1970s, before Cummings Point Office Park and Dolphin Cove and Stamford were developed, Shore Road was a fairly quiet road. There were no cell phones, little construction, smaller and fewer delivery trucks. However, the world has changed greatly since then, and Shore Road has evolved into a toxic blend of joggers, pedestrians often with baby carriages, dog walkers, children who often must walk along the road alongside speeding cars, distracted drivers, ubiquitous online delivery trucks, heavy construction vehicles, moving vans, public buses, cement mixers, and huge 18-wheeler trucks that are too tall and too heavy to go under or over the railroad bridges. Many people, including unsuspecting pedestrians, do not realize that because the village of Old Greenwich and all the homes and stores in Riverside and Old Greenwich south of the railroad tracks are completely cut off from the rest of the world by weight or height restricted bridges. All large trucks servicing those areas must get off I-95 at exit 6 and enter via Shore Road. There is no other option. The negative impact of all this heavy truck traffic has on pedestrian safety cannot be underestimated. These vehicles, many driven by drivers with no connection to or emotional investment in our community, are rushing to get to their destination. They have a long, unbroken span between Tomac and Sound Beach where they can pick up speed as they drive alongside and often swerve across the center line to avoid pedestrians and children headed to their bus stops. This is a disaster waiting to happen. As vehicular traffic has increased in recent years, so has pedestrian traffic and residential construction. Permits are almost 6% over the year before, requiring more larger trucks. At the same time, more people are out jogging and walking to town, school, and the beach than ever before.
30 seconds.
Okay. The incomplete loop of sidewalks in Old Greenwich needs to be completed. All sidewalks end at Shore Road, and that makes no sense. Pedestrians walk down Sound Beach Avenue or Tomac Avenue, are left stranded at Shore Road with only the option of turning back or walking right on shore. One of the reasons people buy homes in Old Greenwich is to have the ability to walk safely in their community. Please make Shore Road a safer place and improve the budget item for sidewalks on shore. That's the end.
Dustin, I'm sorry, I can't read your, followed by Helen,
Handwriting of a 5-year-old, it's okay.
followed by Helen Delago.
Okay, I promise 2 things. 1, I'm not here to talk about bump outs, and 2, I'm not here to talk about the CRT boogeyman. So, with that being said, my name's Dustin Downey. I moved here about 2.5 years ago with my young family. Like many of us, people my age, we rotated out of the city and wanted to live in a nice place. We decided on Old Greenwich because of the fundamental walkability of the area and the traditional neighborhood design that was so attractive. We had options to move to Rye, to 30 other places in Westchester County and Connecticut. But we settled on Old Greenwich because of the traditional neighborhood design and walkability. I'm a national developer. I've built over 10,000 single-family residents across the country, and we have I'm also a licensed civil engineer. My company has a great focus on what's called traditional neighborhood design. As a part of maximizing our ability to get property values, to sell our houses for the most amount of money, sidewalks are an absolute key, an absolute fundamental requirement for traditional neighborhood design. My wife, I will say, I didn't even think about on Shore Road not having a sidewalk. I just assumed it was going to be there. Silly me. My wife and my young children are not comfortable walking down Shore Road or walking there, so we're stuck to the south side of Shore. My wife drives the 560 feet to town every day, which is ridiculous to me, but it's because she's uncomfortable on Shore Road. As a licensed civil engineer and someone who does this every day for a living, looking at the amount of right-of-way that you have, we're actually really fortunate that we have that type of right-of-way. I believe there's probably 3 to 5 utility pole conflicts if we're to do a 4-foot wide sidewalk. And contrary to popular belief or misinformation, I don't believe there's a single retaining wall or property line wall that actually does cut into the right-of-way, and if it does, it's only a slight amount and will not affect the sidewalk. Lastly, I think there's probably 5 to 6 hedges that may have to be removed, and it's unfortunate, but it's a cost of progress. Again, as one of your newest and younger residents, or one of the younger people here, I just want to reiterate how important it is for us to keep our community moving forward. And I know coming from a guy who's only lived here for 2 years, it doesn't say a lot, but I've worked in I work in 17 municipalities. I do about $1.1 billion a year in ground up, both single family construction and multifamily and office. And through my time, it's using the idea of traditional neighborhood design, and Andre Stwani, the guy who developed Seaside, the Truman Show, where that was filmed. Anyways, go sidewalks.
Helen,
I think those comments about our age and they're very true, but they're also uncalled for. But thank you, Dustin.
Helen Delago, followed by Arlene Lamazo.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the BET. My name is Helen Delago. I'm a lifetime resident of Greenwich, the so-called townie. My husband and I moved to Old Greenwich in 1960, having two small girls, 5 and 1.5. We were not on the 1 mile zone for school bus service, so I drove them to school until they were 7 years old. Then they walked with friends on the sidewalk on Sound Beach Avenue, because I live very near Sound Beach Avenue. We lived at the end of Sound Beach Avenue. We have seen a big change in our village, as we called it. More cars, more bike traffic, more bikes with boxes, and joggers. All of the stores were mom and pop stores when we moved to Old Greenwich. They used to get their deliveries by small trucks and vans. We now have 4 chain stores in Old Greenwich: CVS, Dunkin' Donuts, Ace Hardware, and King's Grocery Store. Their deliveries are now by 18-wheelers, which must come into Old Greenwich via Shore Road. We all know why, the reason. On any early morning, as the kids are waiting for the school bus in front of my house, I live on 126 Shore Road, along comes an 18-wheeler going one way and a cement truck going the other way. Shore Road is only 30 feet wide, so they could hardly make it themselves. The kids are jumping onto the side of the road because they're waiting in the street. I have seen them sitting on my front wall, which is fine. How safe would it be to have a sidewalk to stand on away from traffic? I think the motto of Greenwich is safety first. Please support our $750,000 line item in the capital budget for sidewalks on Shore Road to connect with Tomac Shore sidewalks and Sound Beach Avenue sidewalks. Thank you.
Arlene Lamazo, followed by Mary Bound.
Members of the BET and Chairman Ozasmir, I'm Arlene Lamazo. I'm the former chair of the town's Pedestrian Safety Committee. The committee was formed in 1985 for the purpose of identifying new sidewalk construction where needed to assure pedestrian safety. We did that for 21 years, and we accomplished 1 new sidewalk every year. That work over those 21 years culminated with a study that we did that took 2 years, which identified every single sidewalk that was necessary from Byram all the way through the Stamford line. That inventory, which finished in 2006, which is when we parted company with the town, became the basis of a master plan. And that master plan is in DPW, and yes, they follow it as needed. We identified specific locations which we deemed unsafe for pedestrians that didn't have a sidewalk. Shore Road is in that study. Shore Road was a place that we identified as needing sidewalks. 5 years ago, Public Works engaged in a project that involved pedestrian use. They hired a consultant who did a traffic study, an electronic traffic study, on the length of Sound Beach. And that electronic count showed that the traffic on South Beach was much greater than you would have expected. The count from the library to Shore Road was something like 15,000 vehicles, I mean cars and SUVs, a day. Some of it branches off at Forest, but 7,000 go through Old Greenwich. And you've heard that some people go to Stamford nonetheless. 7,000 vehicular trips plus 900 vehicular trips by trucks, big trucks. It had to have a certain length in order to, oh, sorry. I'm going to repeat that. 7,000 vehicles a day plus 900 trucks. I'm okay. I think I'm fine. I think I finished what I had to say. I urge you to keep this in the budget. It's terribly important.
Mary Bound, followed by Whitney Sachs. And for those that are counting, we're about 30 people in and 90 minutes in, so on track.
Good evening, Chairman Ozesmir and members of the BET. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Maggie Bound, and I ask that you approve of the $750,000 line item in the town's capital budget for sidewalks on Shore Road. Sorry about all the emails, by the way, but we felt very strongly about it. My husband and I moved to Old Greenwich from London 10 years ago. We chose OG as it is a walking culture similar to London, where children can walk to school or buses on their own. Our children blossomed with this independence. However, in that 10 years, Shore has become such a busy cut-through that I now walk my youngest, who's 12, to his bus stop across the street. Finally, a few neighbors and I decided to do something about it. We emailed DPW for help and did some digging. Guess what? The idea of a sidewalk on Shore Road is not a new item. It's not a nice to have. It has, in fact, come up time and time again as a safety issue in the town of Greenwich's own action groups. Let me just show you a few of them. Shore Road was first mentioned in the Safe Routes to Old Greenwich report in 2004. This work was done with the coordination of parents, businesses, and PTAs. Shore is mentioned 12 times in this report as a road with significant pedestrian safety concerns. In 2006, a new Selectmen Pedestrian Safety Advisory Committee was chaired by Arlene Lamazzo. It took a 2-year process, as Arlene mentioned, looking at issues all around Greenwich. It noted that Shore Road had heavy vehicular traffic going to Stamford, many walkers, commuters to OG train station, and school children, high community interest. This was in 2006. Shore Road was listed as a priority sidewalk in its master plan. Once again, in 2010, Shore Road comes up again, and yet another committee report with slightly different criteria, but once again, Shore hit its top priority list. In fact, it had a 100% score. It fit the criteria of a project of need, meaning that it was urgent. Shore Road ticked all of these boxes. Finally, last report, in 2015, the Eastern Greenwich Neighborhood Plan, commissioned by the town of Greenwich, mentioned Shore quite again. So what happened to these inventories and these committees and master plans? We're not quite sure, but I do know DPW has a maintenance budget now only for sidewalks. That brings us to 2022. We have a new catalyst. Our neighborhood is blossoming again with new young families. 25% of the workforce also now works from home. People are out and about. So now is the time to act. Our families are not going away. Our traffic certainly isn't going away. We simply ask for a sidewalk on Shore Road to create a separation of space from our pedestrians, our school children, and the vehicles. Thank you so very much for listening.
Whitney Sachs, followed by Dr. Sains Cambray, and we have another 10 speakers on Shore Road sidewalks, so if you want to be a little bit
I'll talk
more
fast.
succinct. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Whitney Sachs, and I live with my family in Old Greenwich. I'm here to encourage you to approve for the funding for the Sidewalks on Shore project. In truth, I've never spoken at a hearing like this, but I'm here because of my deep concern about the safety of our community, particularly our pedestrians. The homeowners in my neighborhood, which includes Binney Lane, Sylvan Lane, Ford Lane, and Ann Street, enthusiastically support this project. The neighborhood associations for both Binney and Sylvan Lanes have written letters supporting this initiative, and in a survey of residents of Ford Lane, 100% of those who responded stated that they support the project as well. Over the last few years, our neighborhood, like others, has seen a substantial increase in the number of families with young children. These families are wonderful additions to our communities in so many ways, and they help Old Greenwich retain its vibrant, family-friendly personality. At last count, just on our 4 streets, there are over 60 children from baby to age 12, and if you include our college-age residents, that number tops 70. As is also the case for a number of other streets along our side of Shore Road, all of these children must cross Shore Road or walk along Shore Road to access school, town, buses, and most, if not all, of their other activities. The lack of a sidewalk makes this much more dangerous for pedestrians of all ages and abilities. The increased volume of traffic along Shore Road, ranging from huge construction vehicles down to pedestrians pushing strollers and walking dogs, has made what was already known to be a dangerous situation even more treacherous. I believe it's imperative to address this safety concern as quickly as possible. A sidewalk along Shore Road will enhance safety for our residents and the larger community. I want to thank all of you for your service to the town and strongly encourage you to keep funding for this sidewalk in the town's budget. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Dr. Sains Cambray, followed by Simon Bound.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. Please call me Conchi. Actually, I have been hearing for the last 90 minutes how everybody has lived here for 20, 30 years. Apart from one, I didn't know you, and I will get to know you. I have been in this town for 11 months. I have not been here for even a year at this time. I moved with my family, 2 children, ages 4 to 10, and I moved for the reasons that the rest of you are actually staying here. It's beautiful, it's welcoming, it has great schools. I just met my kids' principal, so the schools are great, and I mean it. And also because it's safe. And, you know, living in San Francisco, where we moved from, it was unthinkable to walk to school. That was just not even in my head. When we moved here, I dreamt of my kids walking to the school from my house, and bought a house in Shore Road. Thought it was okay, you know, you visit, looks good, looks easy, and then you actually start seeing traffic when you move in. And you see the trucks, you see the 18-wheelers, and you realize that your 10-year-old is not that mature, and that you are seriously scared for him, and not even to talk about a 4-year-old at this time. And honestly, Shore, when Maggie came to me and asked me about Shore, I was like, oh my God, yes, we need those sidewalks. And I believe we do need those sidewalks. I want my kids to be able to walk. I want everybody's kids to walk there. I don't know if you have actually walked around sidewalks that much in Shore Road. This is what we see every morning. These are the middle schoolers waiting for the bus. There is no sidewalk. These kids managed to make a bump with the snow. They look extremely cute doing it. It is incredibly unsafe. As much as this picture, we look at it and you go like, how cute they are. We want them to stay cute. I don't want them run over by an 18-wheeler. So please consider keeping the $750,000 for sidewalks on Shore. And, you know, thank you for having me.
Simon Bound, followed by Caitlin Shrep.
Hey, I'm Simon Bound. Thank you for having me. I'm lucky enough to be both a UK and a US citizen, and I'd say we're really lucky to live in a democracy like this. So thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the chairmanship of the board. I think it's pretty simple. Shore Road is a very dangerous road. You've heard it from the other speakers. I'm married to Maggie. We've got 7 kids. They've all been to the public schools. They all get on the bus. The road has got considerably busier over the last 10 years for reasons that you all fully understand. Last Thursday, there was an accident just 400 yards up the road from where I live. No one was hurt. That was just we were lucky. We're not going to remain so lucky unless we get sidewalks on shore and a pedestrian is going to get hurt. There's a very good video that the local kids have produced. I won't waste your time now. We'll send it around to the board afterwards and anyone else interested. But I'd like 750 grand for the Shore Road sidewalks, please. Thank you.
Caitlin Schreck, followed by Janine Whitley.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Schneff, and like a few others that spoke, my husband and I just moved here in October of 2020. I think you get the point. There's a huge need for a sidewalk on shore, so I will just consolidate what I was going to say. You know, my husband and I, there's so many reasons why we moved to Old Greenwich, but really the only pain point we've experienced in our year and a half here is the need for a sidewalk on Shore Road. We have a 2.5-year-old little girl, and about 6 months ago, I had a little boy, and I'm fortunate that I get 5 months maternity leave. What I quickly realized in having my son is that the only way he would sleep is if I walked. So I spent 5 months walking Shore Road every day, multiple times a day, so that my baby would sleep. And I can tell you that walking on Shore Road is absolutely terrifying. It is very scary. The traffic, like everyone said, is nonstop. And there's been multiple instances, some of which I'm sure you've seen through emails, in which the stroller was almost hit. And I don't think any parent wants to experience that. So, you know, I'm here as a representative of all the parents on Shore Road, some of which you've heard from tonight, who just want to be able to walk their children without anxiety or fear. I'm sure you saw the photos just now of the head-on collision last Thursday. And, you know, based on my experience, I will never let my children walk to the bus stop unsupervised as it is now. It's also really scary to be a driver on Shore Road. You know, I'm hyper aware that I never want to make pedestrians feel the fear that I have, so I drive very slow and focused, hoping that others are doing the same. So as I conclude, I hope that you approve the $750,000 line item in the capital budget for sidewalks on Shore Road. From the moment that I became a mother, my purpose and my only purpose is to protect and love my children, and I think that every parent and mother in this room would agree with that. This is a pivotal moment, and it's a finite opportunity to do the right thing before it's too late. So as you make your decision this month, I really hope that you will remember the children that are at home sleeping right now and know that this decision could change and potentially save their lives. And this is me. It's not me, but it's what it feels like to be me.
Janine Whitley, followed by Cologne Jenkins.
Bus stops. Oh. On Shore Road. Yes. Every day. 16. Shore Road. 16.
Hello, I'm Janine Whitley. I've lived in Old Greenwich for 18 years, and I'm a professional dog walker, and I walk people in Old Greenwich's dogs, and I've done that for 16 years. Over the years, I've walked hundreds of people's dogs. I'm also a dog trainer. And so I know pretty much all the streets, all the houses, who's got dogs, who doesn't, et cetera. And inevitably, to get from point A to point B, I'm on Shore Road, taking my life in my hands, and my clients' dogs' lives in my hands. And I have had to jump out of the way of all the trucks and all the cars, and you try and jerry-rig your walks, but it's very unfortunate that I could walk pretty much from, I think, from the Post Road down to the Gables where I live, to Tomac, the Civic Center, Innis Arden, all the way to shore, and then get dumped into danger. And I can walk my dog, my own dog, through town, but I can't do a loop to shore and come back because it's just so dangerous. So $750,000 sidewalk, one side, Shore Road. Not both sides, one side. Thank you.
Sue Oliver, followed by Molly Salibi.
Hello, my name is Colleen Jenkins, and I'm with the RTM of Old Greenwich. And of course, I'm speaking about the sidewalk. Old Greenwich is a very simple town, part of the town. It's essentially a large oval. And I ask you to fill the gap tonight with this sidewalk, and then you will have filled an oval of continuous sidewalks in Old Greenwich. And I thank you very much. I think the previous speaker neglected to say there's 16 bus stops on Shore Road. This is a collection point for students. So thank you for filling the gap. Bye-bye.
Sue Oliver, followed by Molly Salibi. Or Olivier.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sue Olivier. I'm a registered architect and 18-year resident of Old Greenwich on Binney Lane, and I'm here to support the $750,000 line item for sidewalks on Shore, please. So I will consolidate what I was going to say very quickly because you've heard a lot. But basically, since 2004, we've had 4 major studies that have noted Shore Road needs mitigation strategies to deal with the intersection of pedestrians and vehicular traffic. That started off with, as Maggie mentioned, the Bike Coalition study of 2004, which noted about $1 million for sidewalks. Again, in 2006, when the first Selectmen's report for $1.3 million. In all these years, which is now accumulated to 17 years and at least 4 studies that we've found, nothing has been done. There have been other areas in Old Greenwich where mitigation has been required or been suggested and things have been done, such as the traffic circle on Sound Beach, but nothing has been done for Shore Road. So we've talked a lot about emotions and how people feel that they're not safe, but let's talk about data. ADTs are what traffic engineers use to collect data on how much traffic there is, and I'm an architect and I do a lot of transit projects. So back in 2006, the ADT, or the average daily traffic rate on Shore Road, was 3,800 cars. At peak hour, that's 448 cars, or 1 car every 8 seconds. That's 2006. In 4 years, Connecticut DOT showed there was an increase of 50%. That's now 5,700 cars, or 1 car every 5.4 seconds. How do you expect pedestrians to deal with that? How do you expect kids to make those judgments to cross the street with, large trucks, et cetera? And that's many years ago. I'm sure the numbers have increased significantly, not including COVID. So what do we do about this? There's been many reports that say we should do mitigation strategies. Sidewalks are one of the primary things that they have suggested. So the conclusion is we have conflict of pedestrian and traffic. What are we going to do? This is a big issue of safety. So my job here is to talk about liability. So as a state of Connecticut, the municipality has no sovereign immunity. That means people can sue you if they don't like what you've done. 30 seconds. Okay, so the top reasons you get sued are school buses. We got it if a pedestrian gets hit. We got construction vehicles. We got that. We got hazard conditions on government property. We've got everything, and we've been told 4 times in 17 years there's a problem, and we're doing nothing. Of all the car crashes in the state, well, only 2% include pedestrians. When you get a serious injury, which is most of them, 85% results in death. The average cost to the state is $8.5 million per death. That seems kind of low. If somebody decides to sue the town because they find out we have 17 years of reports we didn't do anything, that's a pretty big issue. Thank you.
Molly Salibi, followed by Lauren Rabin.
Should I only be speaking about Shore Road now, Dan? Because I signed up for a couple subjects.
I think you can do all of them.
Okay, because I can do everything
You are the last
in my
speaker
3
for Shore
minutes
Road,
tonight.
yeah.
Okay. Molly Salibi, lifelong resident, RTM District 8 Vice Chair. Nearly everybody sitting up here tonight knows me, and I've shared friendly relationships and had lots of conversations with people through the years. I'm really delighted to see this is the biggest in-person turnout I've ever seen for a BET hearing in my involvement, and I'm encouraged by that. Needs, wants, nice to haves over needs, that seems to be a perennial issue. People will never agree on that. I believe it's a question of values and standards, and that we need to raise the bar in the town of Greenwich
where we all live. And I bring up nice to haves because I heard versus needs because I heard a member of this board refer to the Shore Road project as a nice to have. I am not a Shore Road, I'm not an Old Greenwich resident. I live up the Mianus River in the North Mianus Coscob area. I helped out a good friend of mine with her baby from mid-2019 through mid-2021. Walked Shore Road a couple times a week with the stroller and could not wait till I could get over to Tate Road or Grant Avenue to cut over to Sound Beach Avenue where there are sidewalks. It's extremely dangerous, and I saw the increase in the traffic and the activity in the area pre-post-COVID. Well, we're still in COVID, but pre and during COVID, and the Amazon trucks and the UPS trucks. It's really dangerous. Please, it's a matter of, it's a quality of life issue and it's a safety issue. Then, regarding capital spending, everybody knows I'm a strong school supporter, and I think the schools' infrastructure are woefully underfunded and have been. And in terms of historical spending versus today, yeah, it's increasing because we need it, and we have a big plan ahead for the schools and Central, North Mianus. The list goes on. So we need to get ready and work together and figure out how you're going to fund all these things because they're going to keep coming. I'm delighted to see that there's bipartisan support from this board for Central Middle School, and that the Julian Curtis and the Old Greenwich money is still in the budget from the BET Budget Committee, and I am expecting and hoping and pleading with all of you for that to continue as you vote. And the last thing I want to say, which I also mentioned back in January, was that people here are speaking tonight about what they want, and it's your duty to really take all that into account. I know it can be a juggling act. Please vote your conscience. Please vote as individuals. Schools are not Democrat or Republican. Sidewalks are not Democrat and Republican. Please, please. And I'll tell you, in votes that I've listened to in the past, and I'm hearing people vote, and I'm crossing my fingers saying, please, I hope so-and-so will do the right thing. That's the right thing in my book, but please, vote as individuals. Thank you very much.
Lauren Rabin, followed by Alex.
Can I have your indulgence for just one moment? People are talking about danger, and we don't want anybody to get hurt on Shore Road. And I'd like to add this as a PS. My very, very best friend in Old Greenwich, Yuki Parker, lived on Tate. She and her son were riding their bike from Sound Beach Avenue to get back to Tate on Shore Road. And because she crossed the road to get to her house, she was killed when the motorcycle hit her. So you need to put that as part of the record. Thank you.
Lauren Rabin, followed by Alex Pop.
Good evening, everyone. Lauren Rabin, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and all the speakers that came before me were just so eloquent and well-prepared. I hope I do justice to a couple of bullet points that I want to express. So I realize that the capital improvement project total amount is the largest that it's been in recent years, and it's certainly necessary to focus on needs versus wants. And on behalf of the Byram and Glenville community, I lived in Byram for 12 years. I've lived in Glenville for the past 19 years. I think there are two projects that are worthy of your consideration in the context of safety. The first one being the Byram Traffic Safety Improvement Project for $300,000. Just to give some examples, roads like Delavan Avenue, which are a major thoroughfare from Greenwich to Port Chester, has tractor trailers passing simultaneously daily, even though there's signs that say no through trucks. Glenville Street is a major thoroughfare for commuters coming off of the Hutch or 684 into Greenwich, and recent developments of former office spaces have increased pedestrian traffic. And along with the team that talked about it, and I was part of that beautification project to get to the pledge of the public-private partnerships, I think that needs to be considered as well. And thanks for your time, and have a great evening.
Alex Pop, followed by Nicholas Wiltsey.
Good evening, Alex Pop from Byram. I'd just like to add my voice to the Byram traffic calming measures. Delvin Avenue and Chestnut, it's kind of an awkward intersection. There's a rise in the road and a bend, so the cars, oncoming cars can't see if someone's in the roadway. It's pretty dangerous. I cross that road multiple times every day. But I'm really here to talk about the Board of Ed capital projects and the timeline of building or planning to build Central Middle School, Old Greenwich, and JC. I just find that incredibly risky. There's a lot of unforeseen circumstances or problems that arise. And again, I just look at what happened at MISA. We had a wonderful building committee, but unforeseen things come up, and there were cost overrun, projects delay. So I think it's better if we're going to do these projects that we space them out. Regarding the JC expansion, I think that project needs to be rethought. The district enrollment is in a period of a decade-long decline. And just over the past 4 years, elementary school lost 447 students. That's 2 times the number of Parkway students. Again, the 447 students in 4 years, twice the number of Parkway. Back in October, Board Ed member Joe Kelly suggested that the district put a plan together to address declining enrollment. That plan has not been delivered. He wanted to get ahead of it. So to make a decision on JC, for me, I mean, I don't think you have all the information. I don't think you can make a informed decision on that tonight or this week. Everybody agrees that we're in a period of declining enrollment. In JC, it's been amplified. It's lost a third of its enrollment in the last few years. And district research predicts that it will continue and it will be below 200 by 2027. So we're building the school bigger. I just don't know where the students are coming from. I know that there's a lot of housing projects in town, and we're hoping for a bloom in the enrollment from them. However, there's a consultant in Stanford, for the Stanford Public Schools. Their housing, they found out that all those new housing developments aren't generating a ton of students. Even though we're seeing the population grow, they're not seeing the student population. As regards to a science room, I teach 5th grade at Riverside for over 20 years. I don't understand why they would need a science room. We follow the next generation science standards. For 5th grade, it's a lot of technology, iPad, research-based, and we kind of moved away from hands-on. And the last thing I like to say is about the pre-K. I know we want to add pre-K, but if the district enrollment reports show that it's going to be steady over the next 5 years, and if we really need extra space, we have the rooms up in Parkway that house the pre-K at New Lab. So thank you.
Nicholas Wiltse, followed by Katie Wiltse.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Wiltse. I'm perhaps one of the newest residents of Greenwich. My wife and I just moved to Greenwich. We bought a house in January. So nice to meet you all, and I look forward to getting to know you all over the coming years. I'm here for one issue, and that's to address the pedestrian safety issues and measures in Byram. Since I've moved to Greenwich, I've thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of it except one, and that's that Delavan Avenue, where my house is in Byram, is genuinely unsafe, and every single day I'm in genuine fear walking down it. Cars go up and down Delavan, using it, even though it's a residential street, as little more than an expressway to the highway. We're lucky enough that during school hours, there's a radar gun, one of the signs that tell you how fast you're going. It's a 25 mile per hour on Delavan Avenue, with 20 during school hours. I don't think I've ever seen a car register under 30 miles per hour on that. They drive incredibly fast. On the day my wife and I moved in January, there was a car accident directly in front of our house on Delavan. Multiple cars were involved. It's because cars go way too fast down this street. Just a couple weeks ago, I witnessed yet another accident on Delavan Avenue. In this accident, one car was going so fast that it hit another car, and then one of the cars that it hit was propelled forward 100 feet and hit yet another car. Both accidents, but for a tree and a plow that stopped traffic, would have gone onto the sidewalk and run over any pedestrians in the area. I recently emailed the board and asked you to please keep this $300,000 in the budget. I received a response from one of you suggesting that maybe this is something that needs to wait until next year. As someone that walks these streets every day, I'm here to tell you it cannot wait until next year. Every single day I see near misses. Cars backing out with almost getting hit because they're running by. Children crossing the street to get from the local school to the shops in the area, nearly getting run over. Someone is going to get hurt. And I don't want to see it. I don't want it to be me. My wife and I recently adopted a new dog. It's a puppy, so it needs to go outside every day. And more than anything, as I'm spending multiple hours every day sitting in my front yard waiting for the puppy to go to the bathroom, it's given me a front row view to just how fast cars go down the street, especially at night when it's a wide open street. I think the measures and the $300 budget allocation are a nice start, but to be frank, it's nowhere near enough. It needs much more. We need stop signs, we need speed bumps, we need crosswalks, we need things that are going to slow cars down before another member of the Byram neighborhood gets hurt, run over, and seriously injured or dies. Thank you.
Katie Wiltse, followed by Brian O'Connor.
Good evening. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Good evening, everyone. That was my husband. And this is our first time speaking at a meeting. We just moved in 2 months ago today. And we, like he mentioned, we love everything about Greenwich except the traffic on Delavan Avenue. And I'll make this very brief. We are very concerned about the pedestrian safety. We've witnessed the 2 accidents that he had mentioned, moving cars way too quickly up, and cars ended up on the curb. Had that happened during the day when New Lebanon School was letting out, or the middle school letting out, undoubtedly kids would have been killed. And like someone said earlier, hi neighbor, 18-wheelers go both ways down Delavan and Mill Street, and there is not enough room for them, and the sign says no through traffic. So they are going 55, 60 miles an hour down that road, which is incredibly unsafe going onto the highway. And so will it take someone to be killed for safety protocols to be issued? I strongly urge you to fund the Byram pedestrian safety improvements. Thank you.
Brian O'Connor, followed by Representative Meskers.
Hello, my name is Brian O'Connor. I'm the chair of the Byram Neighborhood Association's Traffic Committee. I want to thank the BET for providing us with an opportunity to discuss Byram's major traffic and public safety problems and why we need funds to solve them. Byram is at a turning point. Our neighborhood has the highest number of pedestrians in Greenwich, yet it is increasingly dangerous to walk in. Portchester's aggressive expansion will make our streets more congested than they already are. And we all know that the likelihood of people speeding and driving recklessly to avoid traffic jams will increase as a result. It already has. I have a 2-year-old son, Colin, who I walk with all over town. Now, when I buckle Colin into a stroller, I imagine us being hit by a car on the way to the playground. No parent should fear death when taking their child out to play. Not in Greenwich, not anywhere. My wife and I moved to Byram because of how pedestrian-friendly the neighborhood appeared. In the 5 years that we've lived here, we've become less and less comfortable walking through town. In 2019, my wife was nearly struck by a car while 6 months pregnant. 6 months pregnant. This is in spite of us walking at a flashing crosswalk. To cross Delavan Avenue or Mill Street means taking your life into your own hands. My neighbors have been hit by cars. Other residents have been killed by cars. All on the same streets and all at the same intersections. Board members, this is not acceptable. Byram is an entry point for new families into our wonderful community. My wife and I moved here from Brooklyn because of how accessible Byram is. We're within walking distance to bakeries, delis, and I don't know if Corey Wallens is here, but the best hamburgers I've ever had. Walking to these shops is almost too dangerous to consider now. Traffic shoots across Mill and Delavan from Portchester to get into I-95, as some of my neighbors have already told you. An SUV was going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit and flipped on Meade Avenue, footsteps from the Byram Schubert Library and the New Lebanon Elementary School. Children can be killed, and that's something that we can't accept. There's no price that we can put on something like that. Just last Friday, the mother of a young child contacted the BNA's Facebook page when a car nearly hit her son on the crosswalk at Delavan. She asked us when the new sidewalks are being installed. Board members, you're not just funding traffic safety initiatives in Byram. You're deciding whether or not you will rise to the occasion to save lives. We've sought help from Town Hall for more than a decade. In that time, people have been hit by cars, have come close to getting hit by cars, or have had their property destroyed. We've met with at least 2 first selectmen, and to this day, we still have not seen action. The first selectman's office wants this project to proceed, but it is on you to make that happen. 30 seconds. Thank you. As our community raises its voice yet again, the time for action is clearer than ever. A town as affluent and well-apportioned as Greenwich can't decide that a human life is worth less than $300,000. It's unconscionable. For any level of fiscal conservatism, it doesn't make sense. Our sense of communal decency as neighbors, parents, and people depends on those in power making sensible decisions. This project is as sensible as they come. It's with this in mind that I implore you, on behalf of Byram residents, to retain our pedestrian safety budget item. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Representative Meskers, followed by Matt Pop.
Thank you very much, members of the BET. It's an honor to address you tonight. I don't know that I've addressed the BET directly in my 18 years of service on the RTM, which I've sat on the Education Committee and now up in the House of Representatives in Hartford. I come for a couple of different issues I want to speak about. I think the first one that I want to speak about from both Old Greenwich and Byram is on traffic safety. I think the sidewalk on Shore Road, it needs to be done. I don't think I need to repeat what you've heard so far. I think Byram, my concern with Byram is it's a neighborhood that seems underserved by all of us as representatives in terms of our funding. I would like to see the traffic study done there. I think the number of dual income households where people actually can't get here to make their voices heard is very large. And the traffic and the density. We're also considering, I know both in Da Vinci Court, to build out the housing authority there. They're thinking of additional housing. And I know that a number of members of the BET are interested in the skating rink. And if we build out the skating rink, the traffic is going to increase dramatically as well. So I think those traffic studies are very important. In addition to the traffic studies, what I would like to draw your attention and support is for the rebuilding of our schools. Physical infrastructure of the town is important. I thank you all for for the number of comments in support of Central Middle School. I look forward to seeing your support for Julian Curtis and for Old Greenwich. I think it's entirely so important. On another function and in consideration, I would like you to give second thoughts and further consideration to Western Middle School. I now, as a state representative, I represent the entire shoreline. I think it's unconscionable that school's fields have been closed for 5 years. And I would tell you that I personally will not support the skating rink if we haven't made further progress with the remediation of those fields. I think those fields and what it stands for the community is super important and a higher priority than figure eights at a skating rink. As much as we might have more support, it might cost me votes. I just think it's very important that we see something done there. And I ask for your support there and move that forward. In terms of kindergartens or expanded facilities in Julian Curtis, I would ask you to consult with the Board of Ed and with me if we're going to do any outreach with early pre-K or early childhood education to see whether additional reimbursements might be available from the state. If we enhance versus shrink the footprint of the school, we might end up with a larger percentage of compensation there, so I ask you to consider that. And lastly, on a personal note, I think it's super important that we restore the funds for the YWCA for sexual assaults. I think it's super important that we send a message in the community. We have messages about mental health. We have messages that we worry about safety, traffic safety. I think sexual assault, given the concerns I see in the society today, I think it's money well spent, and I encourage you to restore that to the budget. Thank you.
Matt Pop, followed by Liz Eckert.
I think they both left.
Oh, okay. Joseph Kantorski,
You said it right.
followed by Lucy Van Brockel.
My name is Joseph Kantorski, and I'm here representing the Byram Neighborhood Association as its chairman. I appreciate the chance to speak tonight and the many hours that all of you have spent crafting this budget. You must all be happy that the final decision time is right around the corner. This budget, like all the others you've worked on, is a clear statement of our values. By any measure, public safety has to be our top priority. And one of your decisions will have a major impact on the safety of Byram streets and intersections. I'm speaking of the $300,000 earmarked for pedestrian safety improvements in Byram. It is with great sense of urgency that I ask you to keep that $300,000 in the budget, because without it, we in the town cannot continue our work to make our streets safer. Byram, the densest part of the town, is 1.3% of the town's area, but accounts for 5.3% of the total crashes in town and 10.7% of the total pedestrians injured or possibly injured. Speeding is rampant, especially on Delavan Avenue. Properly striped crosswalks are routinely ignored by drivers. Families, fearful of dangerous crosswalks, drive their kids to school, though they live close enough to walk. For decades, the Byram Neighborhood Association has been asking for pedestrian safety improvements, and the challenges we face have been well documented. Last year, over 225 Byram residents signed the BNA's petition asking for safer streets. Safer sidewalks and traffic calming measures dominated the 2011 Byram Comprehensive Plan. In 2006 and in 2010, the First Selectmen's Pedestrian Safety Committee listed a number of Byram roads in need of pedestrian safety improvements. The 2003 Byram Neighborhood Plan proposed redesigning intersections and traffic flow to enhance safety. Since July of last year, the BNA has been working closely with the town to address these public safety issues. At a recent BNA meeting, DPW shared conceptual designs of what would be the first priority for the $300,000 in funding. That is the intersection improvements on Delavan Avenue, Veterans Way, and Chestnut Street, where many pedestrians have been hit and injured by cars in recent years, and which is a major crossing for children walking to school. In short, the BNA and the town have been working hard, hand in hand, to make our streets safer. We value the town's response. We believe that this time we have a real shot at making a difference. But everything we've done together is now in jeopardy if you decide to cut this funding. Budgets are indeed about values. What could be more valuable than public safety for all of our residents, especially our children? I trust that you hear the urgency in my voice and that you'll fully fund the $300,000. Thank you.
Lucy Von Brockel, followed by Betsy Underhill.
Hi, I'm Lucy Von Brockel. I'm on the RTM in District 4 and on the board of the Byram Neighborhood Association. I have a lot to advocate for in this budget cycle, and I will try to speed through my priorities. Hopefully I won't speak too fast. Residents often hear from the BET that we must prioritize needs over nice-to-haves, and yet many needs are deferred from year to year, resulting in the incredible glut of needs in this year's capital budget. All to keep the lowest in the state by a lot mill rate low, which saves people with expensive homes a lot of money while doing very little for middle and low-income families. If you must cut anything, you should stick to your purported principles and cut the nice-to-haves that we don't need. Well, whatever. Here are a few needs that matter a lot to me. One, pedestrian safety and traffic calming in Byram is truly an urgent need, and it has been an urgent need for far too long. There are no buses for the children in our neighborhood, but it's too unsafe to allow them to walk to school. I and others have submitted ample evidence to you showing how bad the situation has been and how frequently this need has come up in studies and plans over the past few decades. Public safety should be paramount. There have been too many residents hit and injured by cars in our neighborhood, and we are facing ever-increasing traffic volume with the thousands of units in development in neighboring Port Chester. Do not cut this funding. Two, as we all know, our school facilities are in need of significant renovation, but year after year, this board cuts or defers funding for BOE capital projects. Meanwhile, we spend a growing fortune on preventable crises and repairs. This is not sustainable, nor is it fiscally prudent. I implore you to fund moving ahead with Central, Old Greenwich, and Julian Curtis so that we can start to make a dent in this need. Three, I've heard a lot over the years about reining in the BOE's operating budget, but because most of the operating budget is fixed costs, your cuts have a big impact on the delivery of education in the district. I would urge you to speak to real elementary, middle, and high school teachers in our public schools to better understand how the lean BOE operating budget is impacting their ability to teach. For their sake and our children's sake, please fully fund the BOE operating budget. 4, I'd also like to advocate for ARP funding for the YWCA sexual assault programming and the Department of Human Services. These entities have literally saved lives of Greenwich residents. They are the first responders to our neighbors in crisis. The idea that you can allocate $10 million for field remediation that we should be doing anyway and can't divert 4 or 5% of that to protect the most vulnerable citizens in Greenwich makes no sense to me. Government, particularly in a town with mostly unaffiliated voters and equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, should aim to achieve consensus and compromise, not wins for a particular party platform. When the BET is split along party lines, the use of the tie-breaking vote afforded to half of the BET members should be a last resort. But every budget cycle, it seems to be used more and more frequently. I challenge you not to use it at all on decision day. Listen to each other and try to find some middle ground. It would go a long way to building community trust in this board. Finally, if there was one silver lining to the pandemic, it was the increase in number of residents participating in public meetings like this. It's a shame that the BET had the capability to do that, but chose not to. A lot of parents could not attend tonight because they have childcare issues. It's unfortunate. And I hope that going forward, that the comments that people have made to that effect do not fall on deaf ears, and you will be more inclusive. Thank you.
Betsy Underhill, followed by Peter Laurie.
Hi, good evening. My name is Betsy Underhill. I've been a town resident my whole life, and I'm here to talk about pickleball. And some of you may or may not have ever heard of pickleball, so I thought I'd go into a little bit about the background of this town and how I got involved in it. So back in 2010, a friend of mine, Renee Blair, she was here, she might have left by now, came to me and started telling me about the sport. She had played it out west. It was nowhere on the eastern seaboard. But she started telling me about it. The reason she brought it to me was because I had run a Fairfield County paddle tennis league of 90 women, and I was also the Greenwich High School girls varsity tennis coach, which I just retired from 2 years ago. And I was married to a town tennis pro, so she figured that I'd be a good one to come and talk about this sport. But I really wasn't a good one because I really didn't need another sport in my life. So honestly, I blew her off for about 3 or 4 years, and not years, excuse me, months. So that would have been terrible, actually. My cohorts would have killed me if I put it off that long. So anyway, I finally agreed to go try the sport. We had to Google it, found out it was being played in Richfield, and it was being given by a gym teacher of middle school kids who taught it there, and she retired, and she was bringing it to the community. So I went up in a strange gym and tried it. I thought I'd play it once and then get her off my back and say, you know, I don't need it. But that's not what happened. I ended up going up to Richfield twice a week. I got hooked in, which is easy to do with this sport. So I've asked myself a million times, what was it about this sport? Because it's kind of taken over my life. I became an ambassador, which basically just means you're going to promote it in your town. You don't get paid for that, by the way, but you are there to promote. So I asked myself many times why I got so addicted. And I had to write a few words. Basically, it was the unique aspect of it. The fact that they embraced new people, and they had been playing it for 2 years, that was fascinating to me. That wouldn't happen with tennis or any other sport. It was challenging to learn, but it was easy to play. It was compelling because you could improve really fast. Doesn't matter. 30 seconds, wow. And it had a huge impact on me. So anyway, I became an ambassador. I bought a net and 4 paddles. I didn't have 4 people to play, but I go to Frank Gabriel from Western Civic. I talked him into letting me have gym space. And we brought some heads of departments, the YWCA, YM. They came in, they loved it. At that point, I had a net and 4 paddles and no people. Fast forward to 2022. We now have the problem of we have too many people. So many people are playing this game. You've probably read it, seen it on the news, whatever. And we need more courts. Bottom line, there's a place in Bible Street. We are hoping that the allotted funds that were set aside 2 years ago can be used to give us more courts, please, because we are kind of dying for more courts. Thank you for your time.
Peter Laurie, followed by Jody Stewart. sticking to pickleball for a couple more.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Peter Uri. I'm a 50-year resident of Greenwich, and I'm actually getting rather old here. And I've been around that long. Boy, am I glad to get here. Do you have a break? All the better. All right. So here, all of you have been sitting for 2 some odd hours, right? And wouldn't you love to get up and do something different? Wouldn't you like to do something recreationally oriented? And I am suggesting to bring balance to your lives, to bring balance to our recreational activities in town. We listened to what Betsy had to say. We need more pickleball courts in Greenwich. And you have a budget item that will allow us to develop 3 pickleball courts and have those. It's not 20, it's not 10, it's just 3. We can measure after those 3 are accomplished to see whether or not what Betsy says in the number of people who want to play, fill those. Parks and Recreation is already on notice. They've got to separate tennis players from pickleball players, and the opportunity is here. The location is Bible Street. Some of you may know I'm a member of the Retired Men's Association. And what's interesting about that is beyond our speaker program, we do have lots of people who play sports. What's interesting is not everybody can play tennis any longer. Golf can be difficult as you get above 39 again. And pickleball is a nice transition, easier on the body, easy to learn. It's a lot of fun. Please consider the expenditure to get pickleball up to speed. And if you don't believe it's popular, read the front page of the Greenwich Times this morning. Google pickleball, and you'll discover it's the fastest growing sport in America.
Jody Stewart, followed by Candace Barthwaite. Barthwaite.
Good evening, Greenwich and the BET. I live just up the road on Elm Street. I'm Jody Stewart. Anyone, any age, can play pickleball. As a wellness specialist, 28 years, here's a few of the physical benefits. You have to move for vitality. It's a smaller court, less strenuous than tennis. Regenerates your muscles and your bones. Bones need to be jarred to prevent bone loss. A quick volley return will do the trick. You heat up quickly, which increases blood flow and releases toxins in your body. Increases blood flow to your spine, enhances mobility. Boosts your immune system, improves flexibility, lowers the blood pressure, enhances heart health, improves reflexes, balances, and sleep. Mental benefits, just a few. Enhances brain function, reduces anxiety and depression. When you have a joyful time, and pickleball is so much fun. Your brain releases dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. Serotonin is an antidepressant, a feel-good hormone that elevates your mood. Having like-minded community combats loneliness and enhances your well-being. The only stress there is in Greenwich is pickleball is finding a court. I took a road trip to see the outdoor regulation courts in Cherry Lane Park, Darien, 4 regulation courts, population 21,000. Mead Memorial Park, New Canaan, 5 spectacular new regulation courts, population 20,000. I heard about the new courts in Milford, 8, Fairfield, 9, Trumbull, 10, population 35. My next road trip will be to Woodward Avenue in Norwalk, opening soon. 4 high-end courts on 3 tennis courts. But hey, I'm loyal. I want to stay in Greenwich. 2 regulation courts, population 63,508 and growing. Did I mention I love pickleball? Love, the best healer of all.
Candace Garthwaite, followed by Ernst Schermer.
Good evening, I'm Candace Garthwaite, a resident at 36 Park Avenue, Old Greenwich, and thank you BET members for all that you do. I'm here to speak on behalf of pickleball. Please retain the $116,000 in the capital budget for these dedicated courts. Public access to tennis, golf, water sports, and beaches makes Greenwich a top place to live. Parks and Rec needs funds to build dedicated pickleball courts and to set up hybrid courts. The great attraction of pickleball, it cuts across age, gender, and socioeconomic status. It makes us healthy in so many ways. Pickleball players are an enthusiastic bunch, and 140 of us have signed a petition asking for more courts. Town-sponsored pickleball courts run by Betsy, town-sponsored pickleball clinics run by Betsy and open play supported by the town require at least 4 to 6 courts to really segregate the beginner, intermediate, and advanced players. These programs fill up so quickly that they crashed the system just this couple of weeks ago. And those who are left out have very few court options to organize the private game. Pickleball appeals to all ages, not just us seniors. Western Middle School teaches pickleball in gym classes. Pickleball is a fantastic way to get our young people engaged in a group sport and spend less time on their phones. They need courts to do that. Private clubs are building and converting courts for pickleball. Let's make sure we provide access to those who don't belong to a club. As you've heard, many Connecticut towns are investing tax dollars to create or convert courts for the new sport. Examples include $60,000 in Wallingford for tennis court conversions, $200,000 for 5 new courts in New Canaan, and $427,000 on 4 new courts in Norwalk. It just depends if the court has to be totally refurbished, resurfaced, or if they're just converting a tennis court and putting in some lines.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Towns and cities across the country recognize the large payoff for their residents with relatively small investments in pickleball. The need is there. And the number, $160,000, will yield a big payoff. Thank you so much.
Ernst Schermer, followed by Peter Scher.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to really recognize all of you. Thank you so much for your very, very dedicated service to our town, because we really have no idea how much work it is, how many papers, how many lines, how many numbers. So thank you. I'm a tennis player. I like pickleball a lot, and what happens is great to see how many people get engaged. I just have one word that I'd like to express to the pickleball friends. The hybrid courts are not really working well for the tennis players. It does interfere, like when you serve at baseline and so on. So multiple lines are a distraction for tennis players, but we need to share the courts. I reached out to Parks and Rec and say, let's have a conversation. What is the best way to do? I don't know the Bible Street project. If that's just for pickleball itself, then it resolves it. But the town also takes a lot of memberships and monies from tennis revenue. So we should have a fair conversation and not just do this via the budget, but also via Parks and Rec so that everyone's feedback is heard. But I really came to speak about micro-mobility and active transportation in town, because you heard it, we really have a traffic road infrastructure problem, and along with that we have a technology problem, and along with that we don't really have the good data. So the various neighborhood projects you heard, from Old Greenwich to Byram, we can also include Coscob in this, because the 0.8 mile corridor between Coscob School, Central Middle School, and Greenwich High School is an excellent opportunity for walking, bicycling type of community. and we had more and more vehicles, and with the public housing pressures, we allow more and more vehicles to come there, and the other parties get very little, if not nothing. I would encourage you, because you're going to look at a lot of numbers again, and you're going to sharpen your pencils, put them away for a while, take the 3D real-life view, do it like me. I walk more than 2,000 miles in Greenwich every year, more than 2.5 miles by bicycle. It can be done. Get some fresh air, and I would really wish you not just very well in all the hard work you do, it's really appreciated, but please, here is an idea I have for you. Over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months, each one of you, why don't you go please try an electric bicycle and get real with the rest of the world, because Greenwich is so far behind in modern transportation. Try it out yourself, please. Thank you so much.
Peter Scher, we're going to shift over to schools. So Peter Scher, followed by Jennifer Bencivengo.
Good evening. It's nice to see all of you again. I thought I was away from government, but not so fast. I really want to talk about schools, but there is one thing I wanted to implore all of you. Please commit yourself to lowering taxes in town. The family budgets of the most vulnerable families in town, those in middle and lower income, are under tremendous pressure not seen since the dark days of the Carter administration. This is particularly true for families that live in Byram, Chickahominy, and Pemberwick, and Glenville, who've experienced huge property tax increases this year. We have to stand with our residents and reduce taxes at home. Please do your part. Regarding schools, Greenwich schools have historically set a standard for achievement and performance. They were always a beacon attracting new families that sustain the vibrancy of our community. Now, however, and sadly, our schools are shrinking with steep enrollment declines not forecasted by school leaders. This is accompanied by stagnant and in some cases sharply declining academic achievement. As parents, we've been hoping and waiting for the Board of Education and their superintendent CEO to turn this around with a bold plan for the future. We're still waiting. This is our new reality. I ask that you continue strong support to funding our schools, but instead of focusing on the total number in the operating budget, commit yourselves to the principle that Greenwich shall have the highest per pupil student expenditure rates in Connecticut, keeping us competitive with other towns. I ask the BET to take a strong hand in assuring that any expenditures are directed to increase achievement in core academic subjects in all grades, in all schools, to all students. You must be the bulwark against spending on unwanted political social education, which is dividing our community, and unnecessary and physical and mental health services expansion that duplicate the efforts of existing town and community providers. Second, I want to talk about the capital budget.
30 seconds.
The BOE has been unable to manage the complex physical plan of 16 separate schools. They were doing other things instead of investing in desperately needed projects, particularly Central Middle School. Please support an intelligent capital program to maintain and refresh Greenwich schools. You must prioritize the rebuilding of Central Middle School as quickly as possible. I also ask that you fully fund the renovation of Old Greenwich schools. It is unconscionable that we have flooding and sewage in that school. It's overdue and it needs to be done. We can do 2 projects at once. I'm not so sure about 3, knowing what I know about the Board of Ed, but let's make at least these 2 happen. Thank you.
Jennifer Bencivengo, followed by Claire Kilgallen.
Good evening. My name is Jen Bencivengo, and I am a 24-year veteran educator of the Greenwich Public Schools and the proud principal of Old Greenwich School. I am here to speak on behalf of the necessary renovations for our school, but also support the Shore Road sidewalks, safe bike routes, And just for your facts, only 4 of my 400 students take a bus. About 20 take a car to school, and the other 375 arrive via foot or bike or bucket bike every morning to school. So having those sidewalks is vital for our community. I want to thank the BET Budget Committee for their recommendation to preserve the funding for the architectural and design studies of the Old Greenwich School, Julian Curtis, and Central Middle School programs. I've watched every meeting regarding the budget thus far, and one common refrain has been the questioning of the cost of the necessary renovations. As the homeowner of an antique home built in 1780 and responsible for an antique school built in opened in 1902, I am intimately aware of the challenges of renovation to an antique structure. While I understand it sounds relatively easy to pop an elevator and some ramps into a school to address ADA accessibility, so much more is required to have a truly accessible school, which includes, for example, ensuring that a wheelchair can fit through an office door and effectively turn around so that the children can exit that same office, making sure the wheelchair can also pull up to a classroom sink and allow a student to wash their hands. To some, this may sound trivial. To a person with limited mobility, it's an unfortunately commonly overlooked consideration. Some of the offices we're using are smaller than the average closet in a Greenwich home, and yet in these spaces, our teachers are working with groups of children to provide direct instruction. The renovation will ensure that our teachers and students have adequate space to work and learn with proper ventilation, lighting, and working conditions. Our enrollment continues to grow. Just today, I received word of another new student enrolling in Old Greenwich from Argentina. She'll be here next week. We've had a very international community with over 14 languages spoken at our school currently, and more anticipated as international travel and relocations increase. It will be essential to ensure the design team has an adequate budget to meet the growing needs of our school, address ADA concerns, mitigate the health and safety challenges of flooding sewage into classrooms below the water table, and address proper heating, cooling, and ventilation needs. I was pleased to hear the Budget Committee remark about the necessary renovations to our school as well as Julian Curtis and Central Middle School. The conditions of our public schools are unacceptable for the students and teachers of Greenwich. We have the ways and the means to address this and remedy these issues and ensure every child and teacher in Greenwich can attend a safe, healthy, and accessible school each day. I ask you to fully fund all 3 of these projects because the children deserve it, and so do the teachers. And I will say, we have room for a pickle court at OG, so if you want to add that, we're happy to have that on the field. Thank you.
Claire Kilgallen, followed by Cheryl Resnick.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the BET. My name is Claire Kilgallen. I'm a Byram resident, District 4, and thank you for your service to the town. I'm actually here for all of the above, so I will motor through. On the town operational budget, I support the addition of a zoning enforcement officer, which is critical in order to address the continuing violations in a timely manner. On capital, as a resident of Byram, I support the DPW project you've heard about, specifically the Delavan Avenue intersection, which is also the location of municipal and school buses, and now has over 15,000 cars a day. It's statistically proven as one of the most dangerous in town and has been for decades. I refer you to Brian O'Connor's excellent letter to the editor dated March 14th, which has a lot of statistics. And now on to the schools, my favorite topic. I urge you, this full BET, to move the education operational budget forward without decrease. I appreciate that the guidelines factored in teacher contractual increases, but you underestimated unexpected transportation costs, and this $290,000 exceedance should not come out of the operational budget, because the only place it ever comes out of is the children. It doesn't come out of the contractual obligations. On the capital, we've heard the quality of life arguments, and regarding the rhetoric and the population, we hear about these 830G projects, and none of the projections have taken into account all of these 830G projects. So we aren't building facilities for the short term, but rather understanding fluctuations over a building's half-plus century useful life. stop the years of delay on Julian Curtis and OG and move them forward with Central. Having served on the New Lebanon Building Committee, I know the town can handle multiple parallel projects, especially ones like these, which use building committees, hired professionals like owners' representatives and construction managers, both of which are reimbursable under the state construction grant. The town's rainy day fund stands at tens of millions of dollars, hasn't been materially impacted during the COVID times. The austerity that some propose does not comport with the desire of the majority of the community. I live in Byram. I am happy to see my taxes increase and not be ridiculously deflated to serve at the altar of the mill rate. In closing, the impacts of misplaced austerity will end up costing more in the long run. The fiscally prudent thing to do is to properly fund maintenance, to avoid incurring escalation costs and mounting liabilities to the town, and to cease deferring long overdue capital improvements. Stop sacrificing the town's reputation for excellence in its schools and town services at the altar of a mill rate. The town of Greenwich and its value is qualitative. It is far more than the lowest mill rate, and this board has the skill to craft a way forward. Preserve the value proposition of this town and approve the school budget as submitted. Thank you.
Cheryl Resnick, followed by Megan Galetta. Cheryl is our 56th speaker.
Wow. First of all, I want to say thank you for letting me speak, but also I'm disappointed that the schools are the last thing that's being spoken about tonight. You can see how many people are still here to speak, and hopefully we're still going to have that number of people to go forward with. My name is Cheryl Resnick, and I've lived in Greenwich for over 22 years. My husband and I have educated our 3 children in Greenwich Public Schools. Over 15 years ago, when I moved into District 1, we enrolled our children at Julian Curtis. My husband and I quickly became involved in the PTA, where I served on the board in different capacities for approximately 10 years. After serving as PTA treasurer for 3 years, I then became PTA president in 2014. Having served as treasurer prior to becoming president was invaluable, as I had great insight as to the school's needs and asked for PTA funds. Aside from student enrichment programs, our PTA funds were used primarily for purchase of school equipment, and we were limited to making larger building purchases, as those were restricted by the BOE in the town of Greenwich. I note this only because we could do very little in comparison to what the school building needed for safety and updated instructional spaces. I know this school enrollment has declined, but a big factor in this could be the quality of the community school building in the district. As you know, Julian Curtis feeds into Central Middle School. A drop in enrollment at Julian Curtis will likely affect the future enrollment at Central Middle School. There's also been an increase in the number of free and reduced lunch students at Julian Curtis. For these students, the school environment is like a second home for them. Might this be part of the reason why JC spends 25% higher than average per student than other GPS schools? Why would the town not want to have quality school buildings to help with the safety and quality in teaching the kids? The Greenwich community GPS students, teachers, and staff deserve a safe, compliant, and updated learning environment where they can best learn, no matter where the school is located in town. The delay in the badly needed upgrades needs to end now. Schools are the backbone of a community. Greenwich needs to focus on funding our school facilities. School quality has a significant impact on real estate values, as many of you know. Old Greenwich Elementary opened in 1902, is 120 years old. Julian Curtis Elementary opened in 1946. It is 76 years old, and Central Middle School was built in 1958. It's 64 years old. Many of our schools in Greenwich have outlived their useful lives and need to be replaced, and not just have expensive Band-Aids put on them to stop the bleeding. Here's a thought that I have heard from many people. Leave the education to the educators and the buildings to the builders. In other words, don't have the school facilities and buildings within the BOE budget. This is not where the experts and professionals reside. This is evident by Superintendent Jones' Board of Education 2019 Master Plan, which originally scheduled the master rebuild for CMS in fiscal year 2033. In that plan, Superintendent Jones prioritized a Havemeyer building where that BOE resides ahead of Central Middle School and major school renovations. Thank you.
Megan Galetta, followed by Erica Jacoby.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak before the BET this evening. My name is Megan Galetta, and I am a 22-year resident of Greenwich. I'm speaking about the BOE budget and the ARP ESSER 3 funding, a $9.5 million tranche out of a $16 million total funding from the state, from the government, I'm sorry. I am concerned about how the money is being spent. GPS moves swiftly to implement new SEL-based programs, Diversity Week and the No Hate Tour, which was a half-day program, just to name a couple. These programs have taken up critical learning hours with an objective to impart social justice and racially slanted messages to the students at the high school. At the middle school level, programs based on a transformative Yale-based SEL program called Ruler is being piloted. With so much learning lost during COVID and virtual school, our students are way behind. One would think the emphasis of the district would be directed specifically on academics and enrichment. While the buildings in the district are literally falling apart, and students are still sitting in classrooms without air conditioning, we are appropriating more budget money to fund SEL. This seems off base and out of touch. Parents and the taxpayers of the town of Greenwich need transparency to see how the ESSER 3 funding will be appropriated. This cannot be a black box slush fund for the superintendent. The BOE refuses to make the ESSER 3 funding transparent. I'm asking the BET, as the steward of all taxpayers' funds, to do this instead. Thank you.
Erica Jacoby, followed by Gail Lordison.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the BET. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the Old Greenwich School parent community as this year's PTA president in support of the $1.5 million planned for the OGS renovation project design phase. As I've expressed to the Budget Committee in a recent email, I think it's imperative that all members of this committee be aware of the comments coming from our community. First, from a family recently relocating from New York City. I wish we had known Greenwich hasn't prioritized funding the public school infrastructure. We would have moved to Darien or New Canaan. Now that we only commute 2 or 3 days a week, we could have even moved to Westport. Second, from a parent with 2 children currently attending OGS, I now understand why people in Greenwich choose a private school education. Thirdly, from 2 GPS-educated parents, one of whom attended OGS himself and now has 1 child at our school, we're not sure we'll stay at OGS if the renovation is delayed. Our eldest is only in 1st grade, and we have 2 more children still in preschool. We don't want to continue to send our children to our school with so many problems. The comments illustrate a theme of waning faith in our public school. As a parent of 3 children under the age of 10, having moved from New York City myself, school system and commute were primary factors considered in town selection. Commutes post-pandemic are less relevant, and current condition and structural failures leave our district less desirable than our peer towns. Continuing to fund only 1 project at a time and disregarding the priorities set forth this year by the BOE will only compound this issue. To the 8 BET members that have taken Principal Bensafango up on her offer to tour the school, we appreciate your time and commitment to truly understand the current condition of our building. As the oldest building in the district, investment is overdue. Addressing our non-ADA compliance is in fact 30 years overdue. The pandemic has only highlighted the lack of HVAC needed to deliver clean, safe air throughout our building. Our open campus and an entryway that fails to meet Homeland Security recommendations are critical safety concerns given the tragic events that have unfolded nationwide. Currently, we have our resource teachers working with students in spaces formerly used as storage closets. For the past 4 years during severe storms, the lower southern wing of our school floods with raw sewage from the toilets. Custodians work day and night to mitigate damage and sanitize classrooms. Our completed feasibility study only addresses these issues and has 0 nice-to-haves. During the October BET candidate debate, committee members characterized the last 14 years of investment as successful and disciplined while balancing needs and wants. I can assure you that public school parents townwide dealing with collapsed ceilings, cracking walls, and flooding feces question this characterization. Partisanship and bureaucracy cannot impede the progress for CMS, OGS, and JC. Discussing topics like declining enrollment trends and building committees hide the reality of our deteriorating facility. OGS enrollment is projected to increase, and we have qualified community members willing to serve on building committees if appointed. Thank you.
Gail Lordison, followed by Bob Cheney.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for the work you do. I know it's a lot. I know it's hard sometimes. I'm not a finance person, so I appreciate it all the more. My name is Gail Lauritsen, and I'm speaking tonight as a longtime resident of Greenwich who raised 2 daughters in the Greenwich Public Schools. I said I'm not a finance person, and I'm not, but I'm frugal. I shop at Marshall's, I clip coupons, I shop the sales, so I'm aware of a good value. Lately, and I haven't paid much attention to the town budget, but lately I've been becoming aware of what appears to be a gross wastefulness in our schools. So you're getting the perspective not of a finance person, I'm a townie, but I kind of don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not asking for a set amount of money for a particular line item. I'm concerned about the Board of Ed budget, which is expanding at a surprising rate while academic achievement falters and facilities deteriorate. I want to point out, again, not a specific line item, that in the past several years, there have been 2 major flooding events in the brand-new Mesa section of Greenwich High School. Also of note was flooding in North Miamis and Coscob schools. My youngest daughter played soccer when she was in 8th grade at Eastern. That year, they were unable to ever play at the Western Middle School home field because of some soil contamination. She's graduating college in May, and to my knowledge, they're still not playing on those fields. Those Western fields need to be remediated immediately. The fact that the superintendent of schools has the responsibility for all our school facilities and the dollars that accompany that responsibility is something that maybe should be reconsidered. Spending hundreds of millions of dollars in the midst of this ongoing deterioration boggles my mind. There seems to be serious mismanagement of our facilities at play here. And something else that boggles my mind. I wrote this script earlier today, but this is something that just came to me. Hiring consultants to do studies and analyses that can and should be done by our highly qualified, highly educated, highly experienced, and highly paid employees. All studies can and should be audited by our own auditing body. We need to eliminate pet projects. They can be data-based, and they don't need to be done by outside consultants. We hire the people. We pay the people. They should do the work. The rebuilding of Central Middle School and all ADA compliancy are a priority and should be with the Board of Ed, the BET, and the powers that be. Who is responsible to see, this is important, who is responsible to see that rebuilding budget is not spent on wasteful studies and inadequate engineering? I want to urge you to have a plan to protect our investments as you consider making more of them. That's it. Thank you for giving me the extra time.
Bob Cheney, followed by Jennifer Behet and Brian Zeller.
Hi. My name is Bob Cheney. I live in Greenwich, and I have 1 child currently enrolled at Julian Curtis and another at Central Middle School. I'm also the VP Facilities for PTAC and have been in touch with all of the 15 schools over this school year. I've come to notice, and it's not difficult to notice in Greenwich, that our public schools are crumbling. That flooding that was just talked about, ceilings collapsing, schools having to shut down because of their infrastructure is a danger to the students. I think we can all agree that the 3 schools that are on the budget line this year, Central Middle School, Old Greenwich Elementary, and Julian Curtis Elementary School, have serious issues that need to be addressed. I don't think that this is in debate. I know that Old Greenwich has a lot of the same issues as Julian Curtis, and I want to make sure that they get the same support that Central Middle School and Julian Curtis will receive. I'm also happy that Central Middle School now has a spotlight shown on its myriad of issues. I'm not happy with how that happened. A school should not have to be shut down due to infrastructure issues before people in the town take notice. That's unacceptable. Julian Curtis is a school I have the most knowledge about. My sixth grader spent 6 years there, and my fourth grader is currently at the school. He's the one I had to carry up the stairs at the beginning of the school year. No elevator, remember? Yeah. Along with ADA compliance, security and HVAC are also very important necessary upgrades at Julian Curtis. There's also been talk and even editorials about waning enrollment. I'm not sure that the numbers in the paper are facts, but here's what I do know. Julian Curtis has a new preschool class starting this week and will continue to have this class moving forward. The school will be increasing from 2 kindergarten classes this year to 3 kindergarten classes next year. There's also a vast number of magnet students' applications this year, and there's even a waiting list for the kindergarten. This tells me that while we are doing all of the other reconstruction that needs to happen in Julian Curtis, ADA compliance, security, HVAC, we need to work on the other issues as well. These issues include poor overall building organization, an undersized and dilapidated cafeteria, lack of adequate classrooms, and lack of small group instruction space. There's no point in doing the minimum now and coming back later to do the rest. Why disrupt the faculty and students twice? Get in the school, get everything done, and move on to the next school. Funding of our public schools in one of the wealthiest towns in one of the wealthiest nations in the world should not be an issue, much less a partisan issue. This is the standard for any town. You make sure that the public schools are in compliance and up to the standards of the town. My final thoughts are this. Central Middle School, Old Greenwich, and Julian Curtis are in dire need of assistance. The BOE has worked tirelessly on this budget, and it falls to the BET to approve each of these schools and approve for the full amount. 3 schools, the full amount. This is the moment of truth. If these 3 line items are not approved for the full amount for these crumbling schools, the onus lies on the BET and no one else. It is time to put politics aside and understand that these schools need the entire town to support them. Thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Jennifer Behet and Brian Zeller, followed by Trish McGuire. The 2 of them. Jennifer.
Good evening, Chairman Azizmir and distinguished members of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jennifer Behet, and along with Brian Zeller, we are the co-presidents of Central Middle School PTA. We were thrilled to see CMS brought to the forefront in Dr. Jones's 5-year capital proposal budget. However, as you know, Central Middle School and its community has endured quite an exhausting and emotional 2 months. Our building was closed, our children were displaced, and safety enforcements were needed to secure the school. We're thankful for the support and the interim funding for temporary safeguards, which were approved about a week ago. However, addressing the issue at Central is weeks, months, and years late. It is totally unacceptable to have a crisis act as a catalyst for change. We cannot wait on any further delays or deferments. The time is now to approve a more aggressive timeline for a rebuild of CMS. We ask, in an effort to further limit the impact on future CMS students and parents, that the BET, BOE, and RTM and all governing bodies continue to work intensely and work in concert to move this project forward. The recently accelerated CMS timeline now presents the possibility of funding 3 school construction projects simultaneously. We urge you to move ahead and follow the BET Budget Committee's support and take the same position by approving the line items to fund design work for the $1.5 million each at JC and OG. It is our hope that for the sake of the broader GPS community, a shared vision may be adopted by the respective governing bodies to ensure a thoughtful, transparent, and aggressive approach to the modernization of other GPS schools. Thank you for your time.
Trish McGuire, followed by Sam Taylor.
Good evening. At school, we give the kids a little wiggle break. You want to get up and do some calisthenics before I start? Thank you for having me. Good evening. I am Trish McGuire, the proud principal of Julian Curtis School, and I've been there for 13 years and an educator in the Greenwich Public Schools for 25 years. I'm here tonight to represent our community because I love our school, I believe in what we do, and because many members of our school community were unable to attend this meeting tonight. I would like to reiterate Jen Benzavango's appreciation to the BET Budget Committee for their recommendation to preserve the funding for the architectural and design studies for JC, OG, and CMS in the 2022-23 budget. I appreciate the time that many of you took to visit and tour our school. In a Greenwich Free Press article this week, it was stated that the $5 million being asked for ADA and HVAC at JC seems to be a very timely project, and it is believed there will be consensus to fund that immediately. Our community is really happy to hear this, but we hope you will consider fully funding our project in the first phase. We hope you will consider the many other extremely important issues that include poor security, poor overall building organization, an undersized, rundown cafeteria, and a lack of adequate small group instructional space that supports 21st century learning. This is unacceptable. As has been stated at other previous meetings, Julian Curtis runs a very successful magnet program, with magnet students representing 27% of our population. It includes students from 9 other elementary schools in Greenwich. This interest continues as there have been numerous magnet applications to our program for the 2022-2023 school year, including a waiting list for kindergarten. The magnet program helps to alleviate racial balance at our school, as well as contributing to less crowding at other schools across town, therefore solving problems for the Greenwich community in general. In addition, we will now welcome a new class of preschool children on Wednesday, March 30th, helping to support a growing preschool program, alleviate a lack of space, and provide a central location for families from all over the district. Enrollment is growing. I also encourage you to consider the building boom in the Julian Curtis district, including a large new residential building at 255 Millbank Avenue. Let's plan for that enrollment in advance. Julian Curtis represents a diverse community that represents every member of our town, children of many heritages and socioeconomic backgrounds. Our tagline is 60 countries and 30 languages, one great school. The building as it exists today is not the best, and most would say it is not adequate or safe. Please support us and advocate for JC, OG, and CMS. Thank you for your time.
Sam Taylor, followed by James Waters.
Good evening, BET. Thank you for taking the time, the extra time to hear us out. It's really wonderful to have an opportunity to speak. My name's Sam Taylor. I'm a parent. I have 4 kids at Julian Curtis. We love Principal McGuire, and what we really want are facilities that equal the incredible talent that we have as educators, and it's lacking. My family moved to Greenwich 30 years ago, and my parents chose the town of Greenwich because the town of Greenwich schools were the crown jewel of Fairfield County and Westchester. No other reason other than that one to select the town of Greenwich. Myself and my 3 siblings all went through JC, Central, and the high school, and hold Greenwich Public Schools very dear in our hearts. And I want the same for my 4 children. So I think that, in sum, everybody else is going to say it very well. We are certainly behind the ball when it comes to our facilities, even though we have incredible top-notch educators, and we need facilities that match that. So thank you, and also probably give some consideration to pickleball.
James Waters, followed by Janet McMahon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the BET. Thank you for holding this public hearing tonight and listening to voices in the community. I'm James Waters, an RTM member in District 12, member of the RTM's Budget Overview Committee and Finance Committee. Tonight I speak for myself, and I'll cut to the chase. Your most important decision this year is related to the capital budget for our schools. You have an historic opportunity at a critical time to lead where others have faltered, to forge a prudent bipartisan consensus that is fiscally responsible and moves the town forward. I strongly urge you to approve the $5.5 million in A&E funds for JC, Central, and Old Greenwich. There's absolutely no reason we can't move these important projects forward. We can and must do all three. There's plenty of money in the general fund and many standard financing tools to do these projects and keep the mill rate under control. We have plenty of qualified volunteers with appropriate skill sets to serve on building committees. We have a current GPS administration that oversaw the new LEB, North Mianus, and Cardinal Stadium projects, which were all completed on time and on budget. Most of all, we know these projects must get done, that unsound structures, poor security, lack of ADA access, and classrooms built in the 1950s rather than the 2020s are simply not acceptable anymore. As you deliberate, please consider two things. First, the cost of both new LEB and North Mianus and the expected cost of Central, JC, and Old Greenwich on a price per square foot basis are significantly less than recent major projects at some of our local private schools. The A&E process will confirm this, but the expected price per square foot to do all three is roughly $550. Second, while you know that construction funds for Central, Old Greenwich, and JC are estimated at $125 million in the coming years, you may not be aware that this will save us over $45 million in scheduled maintenance costs on those same buildings over the next 5 years. A net cost of $80 million for 3 school buildings before any outside or state funding is a pretty good deal. When you factor in the likely state funding for a good portion of the JC and Central projects and the $1 million returned to the town from the new LEB building committee, it becomes an absolute no-brainer. Let's get these projects done. We can then leverage the resultant construction budgets, a reinvigorated CIP process, and various financing tools to make any modifications, determine the appropriate sequencing, answer outstanding questions, and figure out alternative space. I feel confident we can all come to the table next year with a solid, prioritized plan to do this and avoid the bickering of the past. What would not be reasonable would be to kick some or all of these projects down the road yet again, to keep our head in the sand on any one of them. It's time to act, to rise to the occasion for every child and resident who lives in this town. It's time to lead. Thank you for listening.
Janet McMahon, followed by Mimi Duff.
Good evening, Chair Ozes-Mir, members of the BET and guests. My name is Janet McMahon, and I speak tonight as a concerned parent of 2 Greenwich Public School children, as well as a frustrated taxpayer. I spoke 2 months ago to this board as a concerned parent and frustrated taxpayer, and I have spoken for many years before that as a concerned parent and a frustrated taxpayer. Simply put, our schools are not adequately funded. Some years this board has cut the operating budget, many other years it's capital. Every year, however, this board imposes a 2% budget guideline onto the Board of Education, an impossible and unsustainable mandate which has gotten us to where we are today. While I am pleased to hear that this board is finally going to address Central Middle School after an emergency building closure and some bad press, please do not forget about the other 2 schools desperately and patiently awaiting renovations for decades. Old Greenwich and Julian Curtis schools. The irony of this meeting has not been lost on us GPS parents. You scramble to make this meeting ADA compliant, while Old Greenwich and JC remain ADA non-compliant. In addition to ADA non-compliance, JC and Old Greenwich face serious HVAC, security, and sanitation issues. Just because their walls are not crumbling like Central's does not mean that you can kick the proverbial can down the road. Moreover, the students, teachers, and staff at JC and Old Greenwich are not cans, but human beings and children who spend the better part of their day in inaccessible, inhumane, and unsafe conditions. How many more years must they tolerate these illegal conditions? Is the status quo now to wait until our facilities crumble before we fix them? In closing, I implore you to listen to the many parents and taxpayers who came out tonight and fully fund the A&E projects at all 3 schools, Old Greenwich, Julian Curtis, and Central Middle School. Because as we just saw with Central Middle School, renovating schools now is a lot cheaper than rebuilding schools later. Thank you very much.
Mimi Duff, followed by Patty Roberts, and Mimi will be our last school speaker, number 66.
Good evening. I'm Mimi Duff, president of PTAC Council, which is the umbrella organization for the 15 school PTAs. I want to start by sharing a bit more about who we are at PTAC. Some of PTAC's main roles are to coordinate PTA efforts and programs, to advocate with a unified voice, to facilitate communication, and to interface with organizations such as the school system administration and town authorities. But who are we really? We are dedicated parents, professionals, workers, volunteers. We are residents of Greenwich, many of us very long-term residents. I myself have lived here for 18 years. What we all share is that we are big advocates and believers in our public schools. I have 4 children in the public schools, 2 at Western and 2 at the high school. As such, we have a vested interest in our children's education. You might say that we are eating our own cooking. It breaks my heart as I speak to the current BET, the body that controls our town budget, where the public school system is the biggest line item, that none of the members have children in our public schools. So as I was crafting my comments tonight, I'm trying to figure out how can we move the needle and get our schools adequate funding. To be clear, we are looking for adequate funding, not extravagant funding. You all know we are 5 years behind in our 15-year plan. Following years of trimming in our budget, we should not be surprised at what's happened at North Mianus and Central Middle Schools in the past 2 years. Disappointed and saddened, yes, but surprised, no. Getting to this year's budget. The Board of Ed has asked for funding of $1.5 million each for architectural and engineering design work for JC and OG, and another $2.5 million for Central Middle. We recognize that Central has been pushed to the top of the queue, something we're very grateful for following the 2-week closure leading into February break. I would remind those listening that the study that was used to highlight the Central Middle shortfalls prior to the 2-week closure was denied funding by the BET. It was ultimately funded by grant money with the full support of the Board of Ed and Dr. Jones. What we are asking for tonight is to fund the A&E line items for JC and OG. JC is a 75-year-old building where ADA compliance, security, and HVAC are all in need of attention. As was mentioned, they have a new preschool starting this week, and enrollment is rebounding. At OG, as you know, there are ADA compliance issues, flooding, and HVAC issues. The Central Middle School issues have been well telegraphed, so I won't review them again. Would you agree that when the BET denied funding for the recent CMS study, they didn't know what they didn't know? Let's stop pretending that we are building experts when we have degrees in engineering and careers in finance like I do. Let's fund the A&E money this year. Let's stop kicking the can down the road. I know your kids aren't walking into these buildings every day, but ours are. Thank you.
We're going to move over to ARPA. It's Patty Roberts, followed by Margarita Albin.
Wow, this took a long time. Hi, I'm Patty Roberts. I've been a resident of Greenwich for 30 years, and I'm here tonight as the board chair for the Department of Human Services. I speak today in support of the $859,250 that was proposed for the Department of Human Services from the American Rescue Plan. We are grateful for the proposed money. The money would provide 3 years of a pilot for the bank program for preschool after-school program. 4 years of expanded support for both staff training and for our community partners to address needed behavioral health issues such as mental health and substance abuse. 3 years of additional client financing, financial assistance, which is critical with the cost going up for everyone. 2 years for the Youth Service Bureau Administrator, and I think that's an important one because what's happening is we're getting more referrals, and the referrals require the Youth Service Administrator to coordinate services and work with both the youth and the family, and we just don't have enough hours to do that. And then finally, 3 years of funding to close the digital divide for older adults. We're excited to begin implementing the programs into the community when we get the dollars. Thank you very much.
Margarita Albin, and we're going to follow it by Kara Philbin, who I missed for schools. So can I let her go? All right, we'll go Kara Philbin.
Hi, thank you to the BET for this opportunity to speak. My name is Kara Philbin. Community members, taxpayers, students, and families deserve transparency in education spending. There is too little transparency, and of the spending that is known, it is not well spent in terms of safe schools, maintenance, and quality academics. We need to first determine how we are spending our money. In order to do this, the Greenwich Public Schools need to be transparent and provide a more detailed breakout of spending. We need to especially look at the additional $16 million ARP-ESSER funding on top of our robust $200 million BOE budget. If we determine the money is well spent, then we need to look at reallocating any excess, like the recently uncovered $1.5 million in the special education budget, to reduce the burden on taxpayers. And finally, we need to provide our students and families with a safe space that does not tread on the values and beliefs of our diverse families. We must say no to ARP-ESSER funding spending on ruler training, which will embed transformative, the bad SEL, into our core academics, and say no to wraparound services, before and after school healthcare clinics. We need to allocate our spending on our key priorities. Thank you.
Margarita Albin, followed by Bill Finger.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the BET. My name is Margarita Albin. I am the chair of the Greenwich Planning and Zoning Commission, and I am before you with the endorsement of that commission to speak in support of the First Selectman's American Rescue Plan Committee recommendation to allocate $1.1 million to the Greenwich Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Greenwich has a long history of inclusion, of diversity, of caring for its workers and residents. We also have an important heritage of implementing local solutions to local challenges. As a town, we are now facing a drive for statewide control of land use. Our argument on behalf of local authority is quite simply, towns in Connecticut are better suited than is the state government to create paths to meeting the goals of state statutes. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund was established to become a key goal, a key tool to demonstrate that. In Greenwich, state mandates are not required for us to do right by our residents. At the time we proposed the Housing Trust, we did not know about ARPA. Had we known, we would have highlighted it as a distinct possibility. We do hope that private donations will be a large source of support for the Housing Trust Fund, but the language of the trust ordinance was written to allow other types of funding beyond the private donations. In approving the ARPA allocation to the Housing Trust, you would be upholding local governance, grassroots solutions, and helping prove that state control is unnecessary. A strong upfront infusion of funding to the trust sends a powerful signal that Greenwich does more than pay lip service to housing diversity. I request your support of the $1.1 million allocation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Thank you very much.
Bill Finger, followed by Tim Bustler.
Mr. Chairman, members of the BET, my name is Bill Finger. I speak in support of the First Selectman's American Rescue Plan Committee's recommendation to allocate $1.1 million to the town's recently established Affordable Housing Trust. The need for more affordable housing in Greenwich is well established. The 2020 Greenwich United Way Needs Assessment identified affordable housing as the basic human need which respondents in town place the most importance. The town's 2019 POCD identified the need to create more affordable housing and stated that one of the ways to promote affordable housing is through, and I quote, payments to a housing trust fund to allow funds gathered from state and federal grants, donations, and other sources to facilitate construction of affordable housing. We have seen the recent proliferation of 830G applications in town. Approving the allocation of ARP funds to the trust will enable the town to mitigate some of the effects of these developments. Trust fund dollars can be used in an attempt to reduce the scale and density of some of the larger 830G proposals, making them more compatible with our neighborhood environments and the town's infrastructure. Additionally, the strategic allocation of trust dollars to 830G developers will enable the developers to change project rental metrics so that the affordable rental units can be more broadly available to town workers who otherwise may not be eligible for 830G set-aside rental units. There's also always the possibility the trust board may be able to encourage developers to increase the percentage of affordable units within their projects. I know that some of you have suggested holding back all or part of the ARP allocation until the trust receives private donations, and only then allocating ARP monies as matching dollars. If we are genuinely committed to providing affordable housing in this town, this would be an unfortunate decision. Using ARP funds as matching dollars will create timing and funding uncertainty and cause credibility issues for the trust board as it seeks to enter into substantive discussions with developers. Some have also suggested that there might be better recipients for the ARP affordable housing dollars. I would disagree with that. The fund's declaration of trust makes it clear that it would be the most transparent town entity to receive, expend, and report on the use of funds for affordable housing. For example, the trust accounts and records are subject to annual independent audit by an auditor selected by the town, and the trust board is required to prepare and submit annual reports to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Selectmen, you, the BET, the RTM, and the town controller. I am confident the trust will be able to commit the entire $1.1 million allocation of ARP funds within 1 year, with actual funding to follow within 12 to 18 months thereafter. These timeframes are well within the required time limitations set by the ARPA guidelines. And I'm also confident that the trust board, when established, will be able to manage and protect the town's interest in those ARP funds. It will be a missed opportunity for Greenwich if you choose not to approve the recommended allocation of the full $1.1 million to the town's Affordable Housing Trust. Please support allocating the full amount to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund without limitation. Thank you.
Tim Bustler, followed by Deborah Mecki.
I'm Tim Bustler, 30 years admitted to the Connecticut Bar, 17-year resident of Greenwich, recently elected RTC representative, supporting our BET and selectmen to be accountable and responsible with town spending. Tonight I speak about the capital plan and the $40+ million of federal funds currently available to Greenwich under the American Rescue Plan. Now is time to rescue our neighborhoods from years of municipal nonfeasance and avoid malfeasance. The town of Greenwich has neglected our municipal drainage system and surface water infrastructure to the detriment of our residents. The town of Greenwich has left undone that which ought to have been done and appears to be doing what ought not to be done in less compelling areas. I'm not speaking against preferences for bump outs, beautification, sidewalks, or pickleball courts. I'm encouraging the BET to prioritize. Essential community infrastructure has been neglected, not just for the past 2 years of COVID, but over the past 2 decades, and residents continue to suffer real damages that the town has a duty to mitigate, if not remediate. On September 1st, 8 inches of rain became 4 feet of standing water less than 2 miles from where we are now. That surface water runoff descended the town's roads from properties on Lake Ave, North Maple, North Street, Parsonage, Ridgeview, where the town has collected substantial building and zoning fees for projects that just keep coming. 6 homes on Echo Lane were flooded and have remained uninhabitable for the past 7 months. These single-family homes in 1-acre zoning may not have been insured for flooding or even listed within a designated flood zone, but that did not prevent the town from raising their assessed value on October 1st, increasing their property tax bills and worsening the financial hardship for neighbors to rebuild their vacated homes at substantial cost. In January, the Selectmen's budget presentation led off with the ARP budget resolution and summarized 4 eligible uses of these funds, which must be spent by December 2026. 3 of these uses respond to public health emergency, essential work during COVID emergency, and government services due to COVID. And I respectfully submit that Greenwich is now ready to move on and put the COVID behind us. The 4th use of ARP funds is to make necessary investments in water and sewer infrastructure. This should be the priority for Greenwich. I intend to be part of the solution at the RTC, in Town Hall, in Hartford, and in DC. But obtaining substantial infrastructure funding for our town will take time. The currently available ARP funds should be deployed to fix our drainage infrastructure, and the BET should do this now. Thank you.
Deborah Mackey, followed by Debbie Hodes.
Good evening, I'm Deborah Mackey. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Greenwich Historical Society, and I've waited 3.5 hours tonight to say thank you to each one of you. I wanted to do it in person. I thank you first for dedicating a portion of the American Rescue Plan funds to our nonprofits in our community who give so much to the quality of life to our town. And I want to especially thank you for including the Greenwich Historical Society as one of the nonprofits for whom you recommended a grant. Please know we deeply appreciate this. It will help us continue to offer our education programs and support the activities through the only National Historic Landmark in our town, which is our Bush Holly House, a beloved community treasure. So thank you to every one of you.
Debbie Hodes, followed by Meredith Gold.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Debbie Hodes. I'm a member of the YWCA Board of Directors. I'm a healthcare attorney, and I was previously general counsel for Greenwich Hospital for 13 years. I'm also a certified domestic abuse counselor and have volunteered on the YWCA Greenwich Domestic Abuse Hotline for the past many years. As such, I have firsthand knowledge that violence against women in this community is a long-standing and insidious problem. The women I speak with who call the hotline are typically distressed and scared. Most express feeling alone and unsure of their options. And they are consistently grateful to have the YWCA as a resource right here in this community. Many of the women I speak with are juggling jobs and children, and so it is essential that their ability to access services be convenient. Without services being available locally, many would not be able to get the help that they need. Domestic violence is still the #1 violent crime here, and the second most investigated crime overall. Sexual assault is another widespread problem in this community. I'm here to respectfully request that the allocation of $150,000 for the YWCA to launch sexual assault services here in this community be restored from the American Rescue Plan funds. On March 3rd, the statutory committee of recommenders for these funds completed a rigorous review for these applications of the YWCA and gave these applications the highest ranking. As indicated by these rankings, the YWCA's applications fit squarely within the federal requirements for ARP funding. The federal funding requirements expressly authorize funding to support survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. This funding would be seed funding to launch locally available sexual assault services and address a pressing need in this community. Funding these services or not funding these services makes a statement to the community about the town's commitment to the problem of sexual assault. Elimination of sexual assault funding runs counter to the criteria of ARP funding, counter to the previous recommendation based on months of analysis by those who work with nonprofit sector organizations every day, and counter to the pressing needs of this community. Please restore the previously recommended ARP funding for the launch of sexual assault services and help address the continued violence against women in this community every day. Thank you.
Meredith Gold, followed by Mary Lee Kiernan.
Meredith had to go home. So, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the BET. I'm Mary Lee Kiernan, President and CEO of the YWCA Greenwich and a 30-year resident of this wonderful community. Thank you to the BET for all of the work you've done this winter on the fiscal '23 budget and the ARPA funding. We appreciate all the time and expertise you donate to guide the town's finances. This evening, I'd like to thank you, number one, for ongoing funding of YWCA's violence prevention programs in the public schools, which I've done previously at this hearing, and then number two, to speak about the ARPA funding to launch sexual assault services. For decades, YWCA staff has provided violence prevention education programs in the public schools throughout the school year. And these programs, along with the Kids in Crisis Teen Talk programs in the schools, are not grants, but fee-for-service programs that began in the 440's external entities section of the town budget and then moved into the DHS, Department of Human Services budget a few years ago. These programs in the schools are directly aimed, as you heard, at preventing the number one violent crime here in Greenwich, domestic violence. This is often intergenerational, and preventing the cycle of violence in our youth is essential. Students regularly disclose violence in their relationships and their homes to our staff, and they are less likely to disclose that violence to school staff. We can then support these youth through their trauma with our direct services. So thank you once again for supporting these essential prevention education programs in our schools. The violence prevention education programs we deliver in the public schools, however, are entirely different from direct service programs such as the counseling support of victims of sexual assault. Prevention versus direct services to victims are apples and oranges in the context of nonprofit programs. And annual municipal funding has very different criteria from federal one-time ARPA funding. Again, apples and oranges in the context of public funding programs. So recent attempts to add these two different types of programs or add these two different types of funding streams as a rationale for making ARPA decisions is a rationale not based on the strict criteria for ARPA funding and a rationale that is not being applied to any other organization in the mix. Sexual assault, domestic violence, human trafficking are all explicit examples of programs that comply with the Treasury's final rule on ARPA at page 4356. Sexual assault is an insidious problem in this community that is not adequately addressed by a very small regional organization that serves the cities of Stamford, Norwalk, and 6 other towns, including Greenwich. And the YWCA is uniquely positioned to deliver a range of sexual assault services to victims locally based on our 41 years of counseling and sheltering victims of domestic violence who often also experience sexual assault. We seek to become the 6th dual provider of domestic violence and sexual assault services in the state of Connecticut, with seed funding from ARPA that we would support after the launch. So please consider restoring the ARPA funding for sexual assault services based on the clear recommendation of the advisory committee that reviewed all the applications. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Dr. Felice Zwas, followed by Leslie Genchi.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify on the behalf of the ARP funding for the YWCA's launch for sexual assault services. My name is Felice Zwas. I've been a physician and gastroenterologist in the Greenwich community for 34 years. I'm currently Chief of Staff at Greenwich Hospital and have served in medical leadership for nearly 10 years. I have dedicated my career to the well-being of women in the community, and I joined the board of the YWCA last year to continue this commitment. The YWCA Greenwich mission for over 103 years has been to empower women and girls through celebrating women's accomplishment and providing needed domestic abuse services. The YWCA is the only designated provider of domestic abuse services in the state, providing a 24-hour hotline, offering housing, childcare, and legal aid to anyone in need. COVID hit all of us, but the pandemic caused historic setbacks of women affected by domestic violence, and through it all, the YWCA stayed open and was there. Now the YWCA wants to further their commitment to the health and well-being of women in our community by launching sexual assault services. There is no doubt that sexual assault is a widespread problem in the community, particularly amongst our youth. Victims regularly call the YWCA seeking service. Students share their experience as the Y provides violence prevention education in the schools. Just as domestic abuse increased during COVID, so did sexual assault. The YWCA is seeking funding, $150,000, to launch sexual assault services and address a pressing need in the community. The Statutory Committee of Recommendations for ARP funding completed their review, as previously stated, and gave the YWCA's 2 applications, one for sexual assault and the second for domestic violence services, 1, and coded dark green. That is their highest ranking. The service the YWCA wants to provide is so necessary. Violence against women in our community is longstanding, and the proposal ranking was the highest possible, making the ultimate elimination decision so perplexing. I have committed my career to this community and the women who reside here, and I implore you to reconsider the withdrawal of the ARP funding and recognize and honor the amazing work the YWCA has and continues to do. Thank you.
Leslie Genchi, followed by Louisa Winthrop.
Good evening, and thank you for your service. My name is Leslie Sensi. I serve Domestic Abuse Services of Greenwich as a hotline advocate, a healthcare advocate, and a previous employee of Greenwich Hospital. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about one of the patients I met who was actually the driving force in me getting involved in domestic abuse services. Her name was Esperanza, and she came to the clinic at the hospital, 32 years old, and she was 8 weeks pregnant, had a 2-year-old. Along with the 2-year-old was with her husband. And during the first visit, which is about an hour and a half, I would do the history, the physical, and go over an assessment plan with the patient and do some teaching. At the time, the husband wanted to stay with Esperanza, but usually during the physical, the husband will leave and take the accompanying child out to the waiting room or to the cafe to get an ice cream or a cup of coffee, and Chris would not leave.
I always ask about depression with my patients, and I also ask how they problem solve when both partners are there and how they compromise. And when I saw there was no eye contact between the husband and the wife, it was a red flag that something was up. The only way I was going to get her alone was to follow her into the restroom, the bathroom, because I needed a urine specimen. And so I followed her into the bathroom. I don't usually do that. The other red flag was with the Chris answered all the questions that I was asking Esperanza. And I said, please, Chris, let Esperanza answer these questions, but he continued to answer the questions. So that was another red flag that something was going on. A month later, Esperanza approached me in one of her visits and said, could we go into the bathroom and talk so I can be alone with you? And she revealed that the weekend before, her head had been slammed against the wall. Her husband had put his hands around her neck, cutting off the blood supply to her head, and she passed out. After this was documented, another physical was done, CAT scan was done to find out what kind of head injuries and injuries to the vital structures in the neck. She was referred to domestic abuse. During the referral process, we learned that she was also sexually abused. We had to refer her then to another agency because domestic abuse only handled the domestic abuse aspect of her care. So we had to send her to another person, re-traumatizing the story that she had to tell. We had to send her to another agency in another town. This was fragmented care, not holistic care. So I am requesting and dittoing the comments to restore the $150,000 to the YWCA through the ARP. We've got great staff. We can do this job. And I just want to remind you, it's not just women and children that are exposed to domestic abuse and sexual abuse. It's also men, and we serve men just as well. Thank you for your time.
Louisa Winthrop, followed by Abby Meiselman, will be our last speaker. Louisa, you're number 77.
Good evening, and thank you for the chance to speak with you tonight. And may I say that you all look just as interested and pleasantly expressed as you did 3 hours ago, so we really appreciate that. I know it's been a long evening. I'm Louisa Winthrop, and I've been an adult counselor at the YWCA Greenwich Domestic Abuse Services since 2004. Wow, long time. My husband, Jay, former RTM member, and I have lived in Greenwich since 2000. And we feel so fortunate to have raised our 2 boys in this amazing town. I'd like to express gratitude for the funding your board has approved for our domestic violence program for many years, enabling us to help thousands of victims every year. For the past 18 years, I've worked with many survivors of domestic violence, a large number of whom were also victims of sexual violence. Sadly, the two often go hand in hand. Other times, folks have walked into the Y with a history of sexual abuse only, but in both circumstances, these clients had to be referred out, as Leslie said, to a sexual assault program in Stanford, which could better meet their needs. Sometimes they went to the Stanford program, but too often I feared they didn't go, having already summoned the courage and strength to come just to the Y. For the past 13 years or so, I've also had a private psychotherapy practice where I work mostly with survivors of trauma, often including people with a history of sexual trauma. Several years ago, I was fortunate enough to be trained in a technique you may have heard of called EMDR, which addresses and heals trauma more quickly and effectively than traditional talk therapy. I have seen the benefits to people who are able to get the right kind of help for sexual assault and abuse. When they can get the specific help they need, folks can heal, enter back into healthy relationships, careers, interests, and life in general. When survivors of sexual assault don't get the specific type of help they need, they are likely to remain in a state of hypervigilance and post-traumatic stress disorder, reliving horrific attacks they've lived through whenever something reminds them or triggers them of their attack. Staying stuck in this trauma response makes them much more likely to disengage from their lives and relationships, to suffer from chronic mental health and health issues,
and be unable to create a meaningful existence. The proposed sexual assault program at the Y would offer the right kind of help for survivors to be able to heal and become healthy, productive citizens of the town. I understand that the YW's application for the $150,000 received the highest rating, as has already been stated, and looked like it was going to be approved. If there's any way to make this happen, many survivors of sexual assault, abuse, and trauma would be helped right here in our wonderful town. Thank you so much for listening.
One more, Jan. One more, yeah. Abby Meiselman.
Thank you, and good evening to members of the VET. And I know I'm the only one keeping you from your long overdue dinner, so I'll try to be efficient about this. I'm Abby Meiselman, and I'm the chair of the board of the YWCA Greenwich, and I thank you all for the opportunity to appear tonight. The views that I'm expressing are informed by the work that I've done on the board of the Y and my volunteer work with the Y's Domestic Abuse Services Program, which includes volunteering on the Domestic Violence Hotline, sometimes accompanying domestic violence survivors in court, and spending time watching domestic violence proceedings in the Stamford Courthouse. I'm here tonight to respectfully request that the allocation of the $150,000 to the Y for the launch of a sexual assault services program be restored. This funding would enable the Y to provide services that no organization in Greenwich currently provides. There is no doubt that our community needs this program. It bears repeating that violence against women and girls in our community is a long-standing and very serious problem. Domestic violence is still the #1 violent crime here and the second most investigated crime overall, as you've heard, and sexual assault is another widespread problem in our community, particularly for our youth. Nationally, 1 in 6 women will be the victim of an attempted or completed rape in their lifetimes. Most victims are under the age of 30, and young women are particularly vulnerable. Victims in the age group of 12 to 34 are the most vulnerable. And as we know, in Greenwich and across the country, domestic violence and sexual assault both skyrocketed during the pandemic. And as some of the previous speakers noted, domestic violence and sexual violence are not problems that only women experience. Nationally, although 90% of rape victims are women, 10% are men. This is a problem that affects all of us. As you've heard, sexual violence takes a devastating psychological, emotional, and physical toll on survivors. Providing quality service to survivors is critically important to their survival and recovery. The proposed funding would be the seed funding to launch sexual assault services. The decision by our community to fund these services, or not to fund them, makes a profound statement to the community about the town's willingness to acknowledge the pervasiveness of sexual assault and its commitment to addressing this problem in a meaningful way. These are important services that our community should provide. There's no doubt that the Y's proposed sexual assault services program qualifies for ARP funding, as recognized by the committee that recommended funding the program after months of analysis. In addition, the government ARPA regulations note that the pandemic exacerbated the impact of domestic violence and sexual assault and restricted the ability of victims to access much-needed services. For that reason, the regulations are explicit that funding can be used to support services for survivors of sexual assault. Imagine for a moment, all of you, that you or your child, your parent, or a dear friend has been the victim of sexual assault. Wouldn't you want to know that you could bring that person to the Y, a well-respected, experienced organization in our community that would provide services and resources to help that person with the pain and trauma she's experiencing and to assist her in navigating the healthcare system and the criminal justice system as well? I respectfully ask that you restore the previously recommended ARP funding to launch the Y's Sexual Assault Services Program. This is a pivotal moment to address a critical need in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa.
So we had 78 speakers, which is 42% more than last year. And just doing some count in the room, I think there were over 150 people that attended tonight. So I want to thank everyone very much, and also my board here, who have been here for almost 4 hours sitting here. And again, the speakers were incredible, and I think we got so much out of it being in front of you. So unless there's any other comments, Don?
I know the hour is late. The 150 is what they need for that program. You can get it from the street and highways. They're $4 million they put in for this year. They can do without one road or two roads being repaved. Take that money and give it to the YWCA. Thank you.
And we forgot to thank Don, who does GCTV, and he's been here with us the entire year, minute for minute, hour for hour. So again, I really want to thank everyone, Kathy, Pete, and our staff. Again, thank you for a really incredible public meeting. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved?
We all moved it.
Is that unanimous?
Unanimous.
9 o'clock. Oh, yeah, that's right. Get some sleep.